All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your Spin, and this is your Week 17 EPL review show. And leading off, I will because a certain game it didn't necessarily wasn't able to finish, and I shouldn't be laughing because it's not really a joking matter. The Bournemouth and Luton Town game was suspended 1-1. Luton got their first goal, and you're wondering, well, is this going to be maybe a special day for them? And unfortunately, the absolute opposite happened. Their captain Tom Locklear collapsed onto the field. And it's come out that he did suffer a cardiac arrest, and it's the second time in a year because he did something similar in the championship playoffs in June, and he had heart surgery in the summer and was cleared to play. And so this is really unsettling news, to say the least. And I think the positive is it was reported shortly after. I think even before the game had been officially called off or suspended, that thanks to the medical teams and staff on location, they were able to get to him in time, and he was responsive in the hospital. So good news there. As far as just going forward, you don't know when he'll be able to get back on the field, if at all. And he is their captain, and he really is an important player. I think he got subbed off, or he had to come off in the half versus the Brentford game when they were competitive versus Brentford, at least in that opening half, and then Brentford really poured it on in the second half. And I think him coming off maybe played a role in that. Brentford scored, I think, on a corner kick or a couple corner kicks in that game, and it did. Kind of remind you of that Christian Eriksen episode, and so you wonder if maybe on every after that or since then, all grounds have one of those AFibs on location. I haven't actually looked into that. If that was maybe one of the reasons why everything has been positive, but it is that was a really scary scene, and you don't know how Luton are going to react because it's not just losing a player. It is a captain, and also and that can really affect your squad. And there's a reason why it was suspended. I'm glad it was, because you remember going back to that Ericsson episode, those players had to finish that game. Now they were in a tournament, and you understand how that would have been. I can't necessarily question or second guess the people in charge because you're put into a possible situation there anyways. But I think they did make the right call. It's so hard to be able to pick yourself up and play a game after seeing something like that. So well done to the league for calling that off, and I guess they'll reschedule the second half sometime later. And so that kind of gets us off. It's not necessarily the best leading off story. You really wanted to just talk about how maybe Luton were going to get another big win. Coming with playing a hot Bournemouth team, and it was 1-1. Bournemouth were able to get a second a goal back. But yeah, that's just heartbreaking stuff. But there is a positive. There is positive there that they were able to get to him, and he was responsive. So, moving on, I will get started with Aston Villa and Brentford. Man United and Liverpool played, and that's not going to be the leading off story because of how poor that game was. So I will lead off with Aston Villa and Brentford, just because Aston Villa are starting to become not just like a feel good story. I thought Spurs were going to be the feel good story of the year. It might honestly be Aston Villa, and I think one of the things I'm going to get to is this is starting to remind me a little bit of that Leicester season. And you look back, Leicester I think won the title with it was maybe just 83 or 82 points. It wasn't a lot of points when you go back and look. And it was a very interesting year for that to happen. That was before that was before Pep came to City, I believe. There's a lot of teams, a lot of the top teams weren't necessarily flying at their best. It's not necessarily the same now, but one thing that is happening this season that is just affecting everyone, except for Villa, to this point, has been just an entire squads have been just riddled with injuries. And Aston Villa suffered that early. They suffered it with Tyrone Mings. They suffered it with Emi Buendia. But for the most part, they've been relatively healthy, and they've been able to keep that core together, and that's really helped them. And lo and behold, you look, and they are right now tied with Liverpool for second in the table. And you start to look at where we are in the table. We're in 17 games in. I think halfway in the season would be 19 games, so just two more to go. uh, you kind of wonder, start tracking the points a little bit. Could 84, 85 points actually win this thing? Where you don't look at Aston Villa maybe as like a 90-point team. You don't really see anyone other than maybe City, just because they have Kevin De Bruyne back, being able to go on this like 20 plus game win streak, and to get to those 90 points. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like Arsenal are that team either. Arsenal now, I think Arsenal did end up close to like 85, 86, 87 last season. And it does, and they are by far the best, defensive team in the league. At least when you look at expected goals against, they're blowing everyone out of the water. So when I get to Arsenal, I'm going to spend a little time talking about that. But it's just without the the main goal scorers in that team, do they have enough with that attacking line, with Havertz and Jesus kind of, sometimes being a little inconsistent, I guess I can say. If they get, if they start to get goals from, from Saka and Martinelli, Odegaard again, maybe the, Trossard pitches in with 10, 12 in the season. Maybe they get some goals in midfield somewhere. Maybe that can be a way how they can kind of catch up. But it doesn't feel like Arsenal are that team that can get to those 90 points either. So the closer it becomes to a race to 83, maybe a team like Villa can actually be that. We'll have to see. Uh, they weren't really flying at their best in this game, and they did get a little help. And so we'll get started with Brentford actually getting the first goal with Lewis Potter. It comes from a corner kick, and Aston Villa can't necessarily clear it, and Lewis Potter wins the first duel, and he's really clever with the second touch he has, and then Ben Mee getting sent off, and that really does change the game, and I'll spend a little time talking about that, and Aston Villa quickly get one back with Alex Moreno, and it's kind of important that he returned, and I think he returned last week and got some game time because there was no Luka Digna in this game for suspension. And you were wondering, was that going to factor in? There was no Douglas Luiz in this game for suspension. And this was possibly a game where Aston Villa could have dropped points. And instead, they go on and take all three because of Watkins at the very end. And of course, it had to be Ollie Watkins, a player that's known for mostly getting his career started with Brentford. So at the old stadium, I don't think that community stadium was built when he was there, but the Brentford fans were still there, and they still remembered him, and Watkins even celebrated in front of those fans. Um, though apparently there was some kind of reason for that. He wasn't directing it at everyone. Apparently, it was just one. But while wondering, was this going to be a trap game? It's not easy to pick yourself up after Man City and Arsenal, back to back, a hard away ground as well. And with Brentford, I did, they were maybe unlucky with Sheffield. They weren't able to really do a whole lot, but that was just it's a miserable, rainy kind of day, and they were beaten by a wonder goal. I do feel like they're struggling a little bit with the Brian and Bremo injury, though. He kind of just, they obviously they're without Tony, and they'll get him, I think, in 4 games. So that, and I think he was even in the stadium. He's able to train now. But Embremo is just kind of one of the guys that can really, maybe create a little something on his own. Can get by a player. Brentford don't necessarily have a ton of that. But with Embremo being out, in has come Lewis Potter, and he's been given a role to kind of start alongside Wisa. And maybe he's not the quickest, but he's actually got a little shake to him. And you saw in this game, he actually even before the goal, he had a couple cuts, and it seemed like he was a little bit uh, more decisive on what he wanted to do. Now, he moved to the league last season, and it took a while for him to get going. I think he had injury problems last season as well. He was flying in the championship player as a championship player. And then we also saw Damsgaard. Damsgaard came in, and he's gotten to been forced into the lineup due to some injuries, and he hasn't played poor. So there were a couple good things for Brentford there. In this game, we went with Frank went with the back five, the infamous 3-5-2, and you're wondering, well, is Brentford going to treat Aston Villa like a Man City and an Arsenal? And they gave him the respect that I guess they deserve. Or I shouldn't say I guess, but that they do deserve. Brentford normally play they switch it up. They go from 3 attackers to 3 in the back. versus like the more competitive, big sides. And Aston Villa got that respect. And for the most part, before that red card on Ben Mee, this was working out pretty good. We saw Janelt. They're also missing Jensen, so that's the reason why Damsgaard's been given a little more playing time. And we saw Roslov come in and Godos, and Janelt was back in kind of a little bit more of a midfield role. And they were doing a pretty good job to make this as compact and hard for Villa to get in behind them as possible. This is quite a good back line that Frank had, especially after you finally get that opening goal to go in at halftime. This was going good for them. I mean, they did, and Aston Villa did start off strong, but after that they struggled. So I mean, the 4 corner kicks I think in the opening 5 minutes, and then Moreno was probably the most influential player. In the beginning, he had 2 shots, and then Miguel Neely played a very good ball to play Watkins in behind, but that was few and far between. And we were seeing saw a formation change for by Brentford in this game. We saw a formation change, I think, for Aston Villa. Villa went back to a clear back three. Konsa was back as a third center back instead of a fullback. I think we saw him struggle a little bit as a fullback versus Arsenal. Now, it's Martinelli. Martinelli can make you look foolish, anyways. But I thought that was interesting, and I think we saw no Douglas Luiz in the squad. That maybe played a role too. There was no Tielemans. We saw Jacob Ramsey get a start, and we hadn't necessarily seen him, so it was a little bit different. We saw Matty Cash back in the lineup, so Aston Villa had to do a little rotation here too, and that maybe played a role in them struggling a bit. But the first like 10 minutes, the best chances did come to Brentford, and the first one is Damsgaard, and this is a fantastic save by Martinez. I don't really think Damsgaard does anything wrong. I think he does what he's supposed to do. I mean, first Godos wins the ball off Cash, and then Janelt plays a very nice ball to Lewis Potter, who shows really good back to goal ability. He collects the ball, and then with someone on his shoulder. And then he plays a nice through ball out wide to Janelt, making a free run down the wing, and then Janelt has a cross that finds Damsgaard. And Villa's center backs all focused on Wiza. Damsgaard is kind of free behind him. I think there's even a deflection here. So Damsgaard, the open man in the box, and the ball finds him, and he gets a pretty good hit on it. Just Martinez dives early and guesses that Damsgaard is going to go for the far post, and it's a similar save that Martinez had on Odegaard. If Emi Martinez doesn't dive before Damsgaard even hits us, I think he can probably slip it by him. It's just really good anticipation by Martinez, and again, we spoke about him versus Arsenal. Another reason why Aston Villa are where they are is you look at their squad. This will be another theme I hit on them is they've got a world class keeper in one, and then two. With the form that Ali Watkins is in, they might have that 20 goal league goal kind of striker that usually that you need those two things to make some kind of a title push. Anyways, and then there's another chance with maybe a PK shout on Ben Mee. So it feels like Villa maybe getting away with being a little overly aggressive. I think someone even has the neck of Ben Mee, and I feel like we've seen these given. So and then after that, it actually leads to a counter for Moreno. Where it was maybe Aston Villa's kind of best opening sequence when they were able to actually counter without Brentford being organized. And Ramsey did play a pretty good ball to Moreno, making a run, and it looks like it's a pretty good Villa chance. And then Roslov is able to dive down and block the shot just last second. And then I have a chance for Lewis Potter. This is all again in I think the 15th minutes. First 15 minutes, and it feels like Potter is starting to get used to the league, starting to be a little more comfortable. He came on; it was a difference maker versus Luton Town a couple of weeks ago. It just feels like he's taking players on and getting by them a little bit more. And it's a great ball play to him, and he runs past Konsa. And then after that, he tries to cut around Diego Carlos, and he's brought down, but he just can't necessarily stay on his feet. And then there's a chance for Aston Villa. There's a pretty good chance too. It took a while for them to get going, but they have a nice long ball by Konsa. It picks out Watkins, who draws a couple center backs onto him, and Watkins is able to head the ball basically into a gap where Ramsey is on his bike to get to this, and he just can't get the shot on target. If he does, it's possibly a goal too. This is pretty good setup by Watkins. And then right before the goal, there is a chance for Wiza, and it looks like Diaby fouls Godos, but Brentford take the free kick quickly. And then Wiza gets a ball into the box and tries a shot. It just deflects out of bounds for a corner kick, and on the corner kick they score. And it is fitting it comes from Potter. He's trying to maybe take advantage a little bit with Bremo and Kevin Shada out being injured. So he's been given a shot, and he's taken it here. and just Villa can't clear the corner kick, and Alex Moreno is just I think he's a little too timid here, or maybe just surprised that Potter is right on him. Potter wins the 50-50 duel, and then quickly in the same kind of step, in the same motion, stabs the ball basically into the net. And because he does this so quickly, Martinez has no way to read this or react. This time he can't anticipate this. And it's a smart finish by Potter. And it feels like they maybe could have had more. Wiza basically scored before halftime after Paul Torres had a kind of a unfortunate, misplayed a poor pass that was immediately intercepted. Um, through ball found Wisa and he finished it and he could have given Brentford a 2-goal lead going into halftime, but he is offsides. Uh, halftime thoughts were Villa were struggling to get Watkins involved. The space was limited for their attack, and it did feel like they were maybe missing some magic that Tielemans maybe could have been able to offer. Any cross delivered in, was being challenged by and won by Ben Mee and Pinnock, just winning every 50-50 header. Brentford had pretty good shape to at least make any kind of cross, out wide challenge. Brentford's shape was quite good. They weren't really able. Villa weren't able to necessarily counter on them that often, and Brentford did well after they got the goal that they needed, and they were able to just to defend quite well through the middle and out wide. And again, it did feel like opposite maybe last week where Sheffield got the opening, they got the goal right before halftime to kind of just kill momentum. Brentford with the team to be able to do that, and you're wondering, are we looking at maybe an upset here? And then in the 48th minute, this could have all completely blown up because Norgard has a challenge and it's high and late, and this only gets a yellow. This could have been a sending off, so this is maybe a little bit warning. Norgard is going for the ball, but it just follows through and steps up basically on it against Achilles. We have seen follow through challenges, get reversed to a red, and then we have basically an Alex Moreno chance that maybe save or Brentford chance that where Alex Moreno actually maybe saves a goal. So Lewis Potter looks to be onside, and he gets played a ball over the top by Norgard, and Lewis Potter's maybe first touch lets him down. I feel like if it's a little harder because basically after this it's too soft and it gets the ball kind of off of his feet. Um, so he loses the ball, but a teammate is nearby, and he's still able to run onto a loose ball into the box, only for Alex Moreno to just be the hero to kind of clear it away at the last second, and it is brilliant. Wisa is completely offside, and he's just kind of distracting everyone, and then Lewis Potter just kind of slips in where Paul Torres is distracted, and Lewis Potter is on sides at this point, and Norgard just times his pass perfectly. This should have been a goal. This is quite good by Brentford. I don't know if it was kind of designed or just Norgard just kind of recognized the moment when he did and Potter and again I think with a better touch Potter's in on goal. It's just he got the ball kind of stuck under his feet. And then they get a chance with the corner kick. So Brentford goes short, and Damsgaard just whips in a very good ball into the box from a different angle. And Weiss gets the header right, and it's too close to Martinez. So Martinez, maybe a different keeper, maybe he can go in, but Martinez is too good of a keeper to anything close to him. It looks like he's going to save it. And then Aston Villa made a couple subs. They subbed on Leon Bailey and subbed on John Duran. And it was interesting to see Ollie Watkins stay on. So maybe you saw a little bit of a different shape. You understood maybe what Emi was seeing, or Unai Emery was seeing. And another thing that he does is usually he makes subs early. He doesn't wait till like the 80th minute like some managers do. And this, along with what happens after this, completely changed the game. And it made the subs even more brilliant because of what happened. So in the 67th minute, everything did change. And at this point, Thomas Frank, the Brentford coach, has made a couple changes himself. He's taken off Damsgaard and Lewis Potter and brought on Neil Maupay and Onyeka. And I think he's brought on Onyeka to add a little more energy in midfield. I think they're trying to protect basically what they have. And Brentford get a corner kick here, and it's the idea is to give Villa some fits, and instead Ben Mee basically this time the corner kick I think backfires. The delivery is just headed away, and then Ben Mee is trying to win a loose ball or trying to stop basically a counterattack. Leon Bailey though is not really going anywhere, and he goes in hard, and his studs basically do catch Bailey high enough on the ankle to maybe warrant a VAR review, and that led to him being sent off. It was a yellow in real time. I first thought it was fine. I mean, Leon Bailey didn't necessarily he didn't go on screaming on the ground. But when you look back, you understand why. and maybe you understand even why this was reviewed and why they did change it from a yellow to a red. Is if Bailey's foot is planted and not necessarily kind of off the ground a little bit, it's possibly a leg breaker. And so I mean he does try to go for the ball, but he follows through, or maybe he even misses the ball. But it is high and it catches him high on the ankle, and it is possibly a dangerous challenge. So in real time, I thought it was fine, and after a little thinking about it, it does make sense, and it is unfortunate. Not only because he's sent off here, it's a straight red, so he's going to miss the festive period for Brentford, and he is just as important as really anyone else on that team. Uh, Brentford had a little struggle patch when he was missing games, and then he returned, and that form kind of changed. Him and Pennick has been different, and so Nathan Collins in some of these games has struggled when he's just been played, alone or been played with Pinnock. Ben Mee is kind of the secret a little bit to that back line, um, and it's crushing a little bit for them to be without him. But it probably is the right call. I mean, you can see what Ben Mee's trying to do. He's just trying to win the ball back for his team. If he can actually win this, Brentford are able to maybe recycle possession. Where Villa are already, kind of struggling a little bit at the back. Maybe you can get another corner kick, and but this completely changed the game. And like in the 72nd minute, this also could have changed the game, where Malpai seemed to have basically a PK shout. Brentford were able to catch Aston Villa with their high line, able to go over the top of them. And it's either Kansa or it's Diego Carlos who basically ends up shoving him into the back. And it's possible. I mean, Mapai's clearly trying for this. It doesn't feel like he's trying to actually go for goal himself. He's shielded himself from the ball, and he's waiting for the defender to basically catch up to him, and then Mapai basically stops, and the guy falls over him. This could have been called, and if that is, Brentford, get the PK. If they convert that, it's a 2-goal lead, and maybe that kills the game too. So. Villa did get away at least with this, and they got away with Ben Mee getting sent off to help them out. And then in the 72nd minute, there was a Aston Villa chance where Duran had a shot that goes wide. But Villa, in this instance, you finally see them not having the bodies to cover everyone, and now it's harder to close down. Now it's harder to stop that supply coming in, and all it was going to take was someone being aggressive. And Duran, the shot goes out of bounds, but you see this is going to be, they're going to struggle to defend the final like 15 minutes. And basically a minute later, Moreno scores, and you see it show up for the goal. Leon Bailey is able to get the cross off, and Brentford are caught at the back post, not being able to get their markers right. Watkins has Pennick's attention. Roslev has his attention on Jacob Ramsey, and there's absolutely no one in the area that recognizes Moreno is a completely free man. And Bailey gets the delivery spot on and is able to pick him out, and Moreno is able to get the header right. And then in the 84th minute, they get the second with Watkins, and sometimes football can be cruel. It just had to be Watkins basically carry the dagger, to his former Brentford side, and it's a corner kick. Kamara has a great, clever flick to get this on goal, to get this into the box with some pace, and Watkins then is able to power it in. And after he scores, and then basically stares down that Brentford fan that apparently was giving him some stick, and basically, this created a little agitation with everyone. It was just getting started. There were a bunch of yellows here. They basically, both teams just start to push each other a little bit in the Brentford goal, and this little shoving, back and forth here, and you can just see maybe something was only just starting to brew, and then this game just had an absolute chaotic ending. It started with Leon Bailey nearly kicking this into his own net from the halfway line with a terrible back pass where it nearly catches Martinez completely by surprise. And then Malpai runs over and has like a little shoulder shove to Martinez, and Martinez goes down theatrically. And then 5 minutes later, Martinez basically has a similar tap to Malpai, and Malpai dives down theatrically. And Martinez then goes to try to pick up Malpai up, and Malpai stays on the ground this entire time. It's absolutely hilarious. And this is what creates basically the benches to clear, or I guess, with baseball, the dugout to clear. It is kind of a baseball kind of way. And then you see a bunch of shoving back and forth again. And here you actually see on replay, you see Kamar grab someone's throat, and that's what gets him sent off. So this is costly, actually. Martinez kind of just being not being able to let a few things go. Both Martinez and Walpay kind of shithousers here. it gets him sent off, and I don't think it's an insignificant loss. We saw Villa struggle without Kamara in that Bournemouth game, I thought. And, here they were without Douglas Luiz, and now you're gonna be without Kamara for these 3 games. No, it might only be 2 league games. I don't know if they have no, they didn't necessarily play in the, they didn't play in the League Cup yesterday, so and they're not playing today. So they're gonna be without him for 3 league games in the festive fixtures. So, and he's their best guy when it comes to, shutting down space, and just, holding essentially. He's always in a good position. He's one of the better holders in the league. Very underrated. Now he doesn't necessarily, show off for stats wise, but he doesn't lose the ball. He's press resistant, and, he's reliable to just always kind of, pick up the spaces that make Villa really hard to play against. If Digna or Konsa, basically goes out of position, he'll also, go in and kind of, play in that right back role if that space is needed. He's so instrumental to what they do without the ball. It's not an insignificant loss. And the thing I don't understand is why are Martinez and Malpai, not besties, essentially, because you can argue I think make a legitimate case that Neil Maupay is the most responsible player for anyone. Why Emi Martinez was able to get his chance to impress as a starter for Arsenal, and that's what basically later because he did so well to end that season. I think this was during the COVID bubble. That's what got him his move to Aston Villa, and after that, everyone, he impressed with Aston Villa, got his chance with Argentina, won the Copa for them, and then everyone knows one helped Messi win the World Cup. And because Maupay was a Brighton player at the time, and he went into a challenge and broke Bernard Leno's arm. Before that, Emi Martinez basically an afterthought. He was just backup keeper. He was I think in his mid-20s at that point, and hadn't really gotten many league starts, if any at all. Maybe he got a couple cup game actions. And once Leno went off, Martinez really did impress. To in that cup bubble, and that's what got him his move. So, uh, there's a little history to go back on. I mean, this was the full time take was it was gutting for Brentford. Just 3 games of misfortune. It feels like since with Sheffield. With Brighton, they were close in that game. You lose Malpai. Basically, 3 games without Malpai has shown up for them, and now they're going to be 3 games without Ben Mee. But they are only 4 games away from getting Tony. If that is something to think about, if they keep him, we'll have to see. And then Aston Villa did get the infamous Brentford treatment of respect with the back 5, and for the most part, they did struggle. I mean, this game wasn't necessarily pretty on the eye. It was 15 shots for Aston Villa, 6 on target. Most of them came after they went down a man. Brentford with 4 shots and 3 on target. Zero point 0.5 xG for Brentford. Aston Villa 1.4. 4 big chances though for Villa. Only 150 passes for Brentford. Brentford did not really care having the ball, especially when you get that goal lead. They were basically they set up to play to basically and be an annoyance, and they did a good job of doing that. Also, weirdly, Pennick and again Ben Mee are just really good at winning headers. Just any kind of cross sent into him. It's hard to necessarily break them down. You have to be quite clever, and that's where someone like again Unai Emery did well to bring Leon Bailey because Leon Bailey has a little of that creative spark to his game that maybe a few other players don't. And he's able to has quick feet and is able to get that cross off, and he's the difference maker again, essentially because you get that early that first goal. That's what kind of opens everything up again. And it's another case where Unai Emery is able to change the game early with those subs. So I will get started with Aston Villa. I mean, when you look at this team again, you antics and all, Emi Martinez keeps them in games. Made a bunch of clutch saves, especially that Damsgaard one. Leon Bailey coming on was with that delivery did kind of change the game. Alex Moreno had to play because of Digna and made his chance count. And then Watkins just continues to be there when his team needs him to score. And the only negative really is Kamar. Missing Mim for those 3 games. And so I think the topic I have is the 2 things you need to be a title chasing team. I think you need a world class keeper, and usually 2. You need a 20 plus goal scorer. Watkins is on 9 goals and 6 assists through 17 games. Now, the only issue here is they are ninth best for defense. So does that catch up to him? Liverpool and Arsenal right now are on 15. Villa on 21, but they are basically only one off with Man City. Uh, Arsenal, I do think, are maybe best set up. But I think maybe the biggest reason of all is, again, you look at that Leicester season, and it goes back to what I was saying with the points. If someone is on for 83 points mid-May, they might really like where they are at. We'll have to see. And because of the injuries, it's not just affecting the Premier League. You look in at Germany. It's not Bayern Munich or Dortmund that are leading their league. It is Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen. You look in Spain. It's not Barcelona. It's not Real Madrid. It's City Group owned Girona. And so this is just kind of happening everywhere in Europe. And you wonder. I guess the only place that is having, I guess, the establishment hold par, I think, is in Italy. I think it is Inter. But and I guess maybe PSG is leading in Ligue 1. I haven't really checked in Ligue 1. But I do think the injuries have shaken up pretty much every league in Europe, and it's a different season. And why do we have so many injuries? Schedule congestion. It wasn't just having a Winter World Cup. It's also because everything was just moved forward quicker. There weren't really a friendly period to maybe rest in these international windows. Everyone had important qualifiers. Everyone had either Europe or World Cup, and just no players have gotten really had any rest, and you haven't really had a preseason in 2 or 3 years, essentially, with the COVID moved up and things like that, and so it has just finally taken some toll. Another thing that I saw, and I don't necessarily know if this is, accurate or not, but someone was wondering if of all the stoppages to do VAR is affecting this too, because there is a lot of stoppages in the play, and maybe muscles are are tightening up a little bit without with all that stoppage. I don't necessarily know how uh, uh, accurate that is, but that did get me thinking a little bit. Something is up. We haven't seen this many soft tissue injuries. This number of players out, especially like star players, out for this sustained period of time. So it's not a usual city, or it's not a usual season, and because of that, teams aren't. You have to rotate the squad almost week in and week out, and it's hard to, be perfect. It's hard to just keep a sustained winning streak. So I think that is factoring in, and here I think Aston Villa, their best midfield is really for some kind of Boubacar Kamara, Douglas Luiz, and John McGinn, and finding a way to kind of fit Tillmans in there, and you're not going to be able to do that at least for a couple of games now with that red card. And another thing too is can if Aston Villa are still here and we get to mid January, do their ownership do they really go for this? Do they do what basically Arsenal didn't do last January? Arsenal had a chance to get Caicedo. They had a chance to maybe get Douglas Luiz, and they brought in Trossard, but they basically they got in Jorginho instead. They went for a little bit of a cheaper option. Does that does Aston Villa try to get Ollie Watkins some striker help? I don't necessarily know if Moussa Diaby is kind of a goal scorer to just lead the line, and do you trust Jean Duran if something happens to Watkins? And again, a lot of their attack, they were able to do a lot of this because of the unselfish running that Watkins almost does by himself at times. Because that way they can basically play 4 or 5 in midfield and really crowd things up. So are they able to do this throughout an entire season with Watkins not really getting a ton of rest? Now, maybe it helps that Watkins doesn't get a lot of England call ups, at least yet. Uh, so maybe he's able to rest some minutes there. They're not necessarily in cups, but they are in Europe. And so is Watkins going to feature a ton for them in Europe? Do the injuries and game load and travel finally catch up to them or not? If not, they maybe could do this. It's not just a great start to this season since Unai Emery has come to this season since going back to I think the calendar year in January. Villa are 2 or 3 in the table as far as points won. So this technically shouldn't be that surprising. Um, can they continue it? And if they can only just add a little bit to their squad, and they do have pretty good ownership, or they do have owners with some money, this could really be interesting. And I think the other thing I said, you probably you need an elite coach, though. I don't necessarily know if Ranieri was an elite coach, but he worked for that Leicester side. But Unai Emery does feel that way. He's a winning coach where he's been, and you look back at where that run at Arsenal. Uh, Maybe some instances, played a role into why it didn't necessarily work out there. He was following Arsene Wenger, so it was gonna be hard for fans to just kind of embrace him. He was trying to, play a different style with players that Arsene Wenger's players, and I think he still finished like 6th or 7th, got them a Europa, uh, uh, final, essentially. Just, he wasn't Wenger. He wasn't, getting him into Champions League, so and he went to Villarreal. He's done some time elsewhere, and yeah, it just kind of it's kind of a a fun story to see. And with Brentford, I did feel like for the most part, Aston Villa didn't really get any dangerous looks on Flackens until really that Ben Me thing. And so I think in this season, it's just kind of a throwaway season. And you kind of maybe expected that with Tony. And they do have 3 big games coming up, Wolves, Palace, and Forest, but no Ben Me for those games. But after that, it's rough. In January, they have Liverpool City and I believe Spurs, but they do have Tony back in mid-January. So this is going to be a key stretch for them a little bit. They have been relatively safe, but Wolves, Palace, and especially Palace and Forest, those are clubs you want to be just above the table no matter what. You don't really want to have points, picked up on you with those teams. So we'll have to see. And they did have a Collins is back. Zanka is back. So we'll have to see. And they're missing Ajer. But they might have him back for the new year. So this could be a rough stretch a little bit for Brentford. And then it is the countdown is when do they get Tony back? And then I'll move on to Liverpool and Man United. I spent a little bit more time on Aston Villa because why not? They deserve it. Here, I'm not necessarily going to spend a ton of time on the game because really not a ton happened, at least until the second half. With Man United, though, a lot of the storylines coming into this played a role into what we saw. So there was no Bruno Fernandes, meaning there's not going to be a free player with just a role to leave and basically creates open space everywhere for the opposing team. There was no Harry Maguire because he was injured, so Ten Hag was forced to play Rafael Varane. Unfortunately, because that turned out to be quite important. Ten Hag didn't go with Luke Shaw at center back. He actually played him at fullback, and Luke Shaw was very, very good this game. And so Ten Hag was kind of his hand had been forced on him, and it worked out, unfortunately. And with Liverpool, they did have a few games in a row where they hadn't really been flying at the best and been bailed out with some late heroics. And does that finally catch up? Can you last a season? The only thing I was thinking about is they were in Anfield and they basically only win at Anfield, and so I was trying to just keep that in my spirits. But I knew this was going to be a hard game coming in. It was 1-0 last season, and then just Man United gave up and the floodgates opened and they got their 7. It was a 7-0 game. Man United players remembered that. And I just think I just think that it was always going to be they were always going to show up and play their best football, or at least as competitive as possible. I didn't think this was going to be necessarily easy, and frankly, because they didn't have someone like Bruno, who maybe Man United win it with Bruno because Bruno can just get a goal out of nothing. But McTominay, Mano, and Amrabat were so organized and compact. It was hard for Liverpool to play through them in a way that I don't think you could have done this without Bruno being suspended. And unfortunately for Man United fans, Bruno is basically their captain, so he's going to play when he's allowed to play. So yeah, I don't think you can repeat this essentially, but this did work out. Another thing you can say is Anthony and Garnacho, for the most part, did their defensive duties and they helped back. It was really just Hoyland, and then it was like a back. It was a midfield 5. Essentially, they did a really good job of staying back and compact. They weren't just because in the past, I think in last season, Anthony was especially at fault for when Robinson was able to run over and Dallo had an issue or Juan Bissaka had an issue with an overlap. Anthony was doing the defensive work this game in a way we hadn't really seen. So credit to him there. And then Evans and Varane, you're not going to be able to play a high line. You're not going to be able to because Darwin Núñez is going to feast off that. So there wasn't really space. So they basically played a mid block. and they basically had everyone behind the ball, and they didn't necessarily put any ball pressure when Liverpool's defenders had it. And you can do this when you're not chasing the game. So Liverpool needed to get that opening goal. If they could have gotten that first goal, I think the floodgates could have opened, but they weren't able to get that. And so that just kind of played a role into this. Another thing too is Ten Hag, I guess because of Bruno being out, had to find someone else to fit next to Amrabat. Last season it would have been McTominay. In this season, he's got someone like Kobe Mino. And this is a player that Man United haven't, or I guess maybe it would have been Casemiro, but this is a player that Man United haven't really had in a long time, and he's just 18, so again, or 19, but he was comfortable on in possession, uh, and it's just a he doesn't Liverpool were trying to press and get them to lose it. Amrabat was losing it left and right. Mano wasn't. Mano was not only making the right passes, finding players, he was threading balls in behind. He almost played a Garnacho in on goal. And Varane and Evans had as good of a game as I think they played together. And Luke Shaw probably played his best game in a while at left back again. He may arguably man of the match. And then Onana didn't necessarily have his best game, I guess stats wise. But Man United were basically playing through him, and they were asking him to not just go long all the time, to actually try to pick out some teammates. And Liverpool were trying to press him into mistake after mistake, and for the most part, Onana didn't make mistakes, and so credit to him as well. And again, in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, Liverpool had 7 corner kicks, and it did feel like they were a bunch of kneeling moments. I mean, just the final ball was off. So Szoboszlai missed a pass to Trent, it went out of bounds. Salah missed a pass to Szoboszlai. If he gets that right, Szoboszlai is basically in on goal. He can either square it or go for goal himself. Nunes basically tried to head a cross instead of going for goal himself. That was probably the best chance in the game. Van Dijk actually, this was the best chance. Van Dijk had a free header on a corner kick, and it was right at Onana. So there's just these nearly moments. Szoboszlai did get to the byline a couple times, but just overhit the pass or missed it. So I mean, it's not like United were necessarily spectacular. Liverpool had 35 attempts this game, but just they weren't able to get to get the real one. And if anything, the real scares, at least in the first half, or I guess maybe early second half, did come with Garnacho. Trent basically was forced to kick a ball last second to stop him, and then there was another time where it looked like Trent basically shoved him off the ball. That could have been a foul, but the ref was allowing a lot of play to go forward. Uh, on that one moment when Kobe Mano plays Garnacho in, I was wondering if that's Rashford instead of Garnacho. I think Rashford's able to get at least be able to get by Trent. I think Rashford probably would have been in on goal. So it was interesting to see Rashford not necessarily play in this game. And Garnacho, that was just something I was thinking about. And then really the probably the biggest chance even came with Hoyland, which I'll get to. So my halftime thought was Liverpool just seemed off it. Salah, Szoboszlai, Trent, Gravenberch, Diaz, and Nunes. Just no one was really. I mean, there were a lot of efforts, but just a lot of blocks and a lot of corner kicks. And Man United were fine as long as it was 1-1, 0-0. The three in midfield were doing a good job to close down any kind of passing lane into the middle. McTominay was played higher up. McTominay wasn't played as a pivot midfielder. He was played in the Bruno role, and he's a liability on the ball. But he's got energy, he's got pace, and he's quite good as an attacking midfielder kind of player. And you saw him close down very, very well. He wasn't. Anytime the ball was Liverpool were trying to find the passes, McTominay was doing a good job to at least close off those passing lanes to make it as hard as possible. And then Shaw, Varane, and Evans were doing a good job defensively as well. And but the game did really kick off in the second half. So here, Alexander Arnold hits a side netting. It's a Tsimikas cross. It's overhit, but it finds Salah. Salah then plays it to Trent, making a run into the box, and he dances past Man United's defenders, but he can't get the shot on target. Salah then had a cross that nearly picked out Nunes, making a good one behind Everton in the box. And then we have the Garnacho chance. So Onana and Man United get the passes right. Kobe Mano gets the ball with some space and looks up and plays a lovely ball, picking out Garnacho's run, and it is a terrific ball by Mano, and just Trent's able to just kick the ball away before Garnacho can even get this off. I do think this is the one where I feel like if Rashford's playing instead, it's maybe different. And another thing that was showing up is there was never really a chance to really, have sustained momentum where you were forcing Onana to make save after save because Man United did well enough to draw some fouls when they needed to kind of take the sting out of the game. There was a lot of stop and restarts, which prevented Liverpool from really having any sustained pressure, any kind of wave after wave of attacking pressure. And that's usually a way to kind of break a low block side as well. And then Liverpool were kind of forced to make some changes. So things weren't really going well. And then Gravenberch pulled up with a hamstring. And this forced Klopp to make some changes, and I think it actually worked out. And unfortunately, here is Klopp didn't stick with this. He ended up changing something 10 minutes later. But so he brought on Gomez to play fullback and moved Trent into basically a central midfield position by himself. And then he brought Gakpo on. So you finally saw Gakpo and Nunez played together at the same time. Gakpo is a 1v1 matchup nightmare. And Trent was able to influence the game more from a central position. And Shaw had no idea what to do with Salah and Gomez. So you finally 'cause Trent was kind of playing centrally anyways. And Garnacho was at least forcing him to do defensive work. You finally brought on a fullback. Uh, and Gomez did a good job on Garnacho, but not only that, Gomez he offers good width. And not only that, he has really good delivery. And one thing I'm going to touch on, when I get to Liverpool in a deeper dive, is I kind of want to see this more. To be honest, Trent is so good at influencing the game. I almost feel like he's being wasted a little bit at fullback. And the only thing I'm worried about here is I don't really want Trent to be overplayed, but I feel like Trent needs to be a full time midfielder now. And Gomez needs to kind of be at least in these big games. I guess you can say. I want Gomez to be the guy that stretches the pitch because that'll force the fullback to respect Gomez. That will always free up Salah because Salah wasn't able to do anything when he had two people basically on him at all times. Salah needs someone overlapping him to really make that work. And sometimes that can be Szoboszlai, but I like it being the fullback. To be honest, and because not only that, Gomez has really good delivery that can get you involved with Gakpo, that can and Nunes, and again, it's those you send 20 crosses into a game, both of them are going to win the majority of their duels. So the only thing I'm complaining about here is Klopp didn't keep this. He ended up eventually taking Nunes off to put Gakpo as kind of the main striker. I would have liked them both to stay on. Um, and then we have a solid shot, comfortably saved, but again, this comes from Trent basically picking out Gomez. So Gomez makes a late run up the sideline, and then he basically finds Salah, and then Salah, is close to the penalty area when he receives the ball, and he's able to get a shot, and then Trent nearly scores, and this comes right after Man United finally start to open up and try to attack themselves, and Liverpool are able to counter, and the game becomes a little more stretched and open, and Trent has a really nice ball first to find Salah's feet, and then eventually Salah lays it off to Trent, making a late run near the box, and because he's unmarked, he's coming from deeper back. Man United don't really see this, and it's a great hit, and it just misses the outside of the post, and it's nearly perfect. But this was a theme of how the entire game was going. Liverpool's best moves, I thought, came when Alexander-Arnold was getting the ball and dictating the game from a central area. He just seemed to find more line splitting passes to teammates than anyone else, and it felt it's almost a waste to play him at fullback, and that's kind of what I've gone mentioned. And then in the 67th minute, probably Man United's best chance did come to Hoyland, and probably a chance to win it. Again, I'm wondering if Rashford's here instead, if this is different. Now, Man United finally did create two chances in this game to steal it. And Evans here goes long. He picks out Anthony. Anthony chests it to Hoyland. So a good link up play here. And then plays a good forward pass to McTominay. And then McTominay passes it back to Anthony. Anthony cuts and makes the right decision to play it quickly to McTominay. And then McTominay one times it to Hoyland, making a run past Kanate. And it's 1v1 with Allison. Allison does really well to come out and make himself as big as possible. But the side of the goal is open, and instead he hits it basically right at Allison. Um, and Hoyland does everything right here except for the finish. And Man United finally created a little chance for him. It seems like he's not really a player that's going to create a ton of chances himself. He kind of needs a little creation for him. Man United did create that, and again, it does feel like you're paying 80 million for him. You need your striker to do this, but I can't necessarily say that because Liverpool basically have this moment a couple moments later. They're having a little bit of the same issues with Darwin Núñez. And then we have a chance with Salah making an Onana save. And this is a good Onana save because Salah gets the shot off well. And Núñez is in the area. And if Onana parries this just a little off, Nunes is there for a tap in. So Onana just doesn't just punch the Salah shot away. He's able to punch it away from Darwin Nunes. And then Liverpool basically have their Hoyland or Nunes moment. Salah chases a long ball. Varane, Onana does really well to actually come out and kick this out of bounds because it looks like Varane has no chance here. And Salah then kicks a quick throw in. He finds Darwin Nunes, and they do a little give and go with each other. And then Salah basically plays a great ball that splits two Man United players to Nunes in the box. And Nunes has just a clunky touch, and the ball basically bounces off his knee. But he's still able to. He's probably still going to get to this ball. But then Diaz runs and basically takes a shot off him, and it's blocked by Evans. I feel like if Diaz just leaves this away, Nunes probably has the best chance to just slide this in with his left foot. But the reason why I'm going in it a little bit is the clunky touch. The reason he didn't necessarily have to do that, and I just feel like he just runs and he looks down when he dribbles, and it feels like everything is still going quick for him. It's not. I'm normally kind of speculating a little bit, but, sometimes maybe the pressure kind of gets to him and, he's tense a little bit. There's no reason for him to have this kind of clunky touch where, again, just it bounces off his knee and he loses the ball. It almost worked out. He probably does work out if Diaz doesn't take this off him, but it was just unfortunate, here, and basically the only thing Liverpool can get is a corner kick out of this. And then in the 84th minute, there's a Konate chance that this would have been amazing had this gone in. Because basically Konate gets away with stepping on the ball and then has a really nice turn, stops on a dime, is able to turn and get a shot off, and it's a great shot. It has a lot of power, but it's just right at Onana. Um, and then there's a chance for Gomez, and Salah and Gomez have a little give and go here, and Gomez makes a great run into the box, but just like Trent, just can't get his angles right, and he can only hit the side netting. Gomez was good coming on as a sub. And then we have the weird thing with Diego Dallo getting sent off, or basically arguing with Michael Oliver, and I think is probably the stupidest red card of the season. And it's not because of what Dallo does; it's just Oliver's just weird. Uh, in basketball, Nikola Jokic, got basically sent out in their game because basically he said something to the ref, and then basically there was an ejection, and I'm guessing that was just it. It wasn't just Dallow's kind of reaction. He basically said something to Michael Oliver. But it's a big game. It's kind of close to the end. I just think it was foolish. So again, the refs just kind of making weird decisions. That's just kind of been a theme in this season as well. And then there was a chance for Gakpo. Liverpool get a late free kick, a good ball sent into the box, but Gakpo can't keep the header down. And so you figured Man United were going to try to respond and play hard and make things difficult, and they did. But Liverpool still created 35 chances, but the only thing is they weren't really able to trouble Onana much. They did force Onana into making a couple good saves, uh, but for the most part, Onana did a good job also catching some of these. That Konate chance is hit really, really hard. If Onana spills it, they probably score. And there were a couple moments like that. So good for him. He's had some stick. He showed up big this game. Um, and the game was dull. I've seen a lot of people complaining about it. But after the first, 65 minutes, it did open up a little bit. Man United just were sitting back, and they did not want an open game, and you saw why. The few moments Liverpool were able to break out and counter and get in behind their line, Man United were sitting ducks. With Varane and Evans, so Liverpool weren't able to make Man United playing Johnny Evans count. Unfortunately, I mean 34 shots, 8 on target. Man United 6 shots and only one. 0.75 for Man United and XG 2.3 for Liverpool. And Liverpool with 5'10", 84% accuracy. Man United with 209. Another thing too was just there's a lot of Liverpool were struggling to when the ball would get to Endo or someone, they were struggling to just find a way to get the midfielders involved a little bit. Gravenberch and Sloboshai were just kind of playing as advanced eights, looking for the ball. No one was really dropping into pockets. Or Darwin Núñez was always trying to be on the shoulder, but the space to run behind wasn't really there, and you couldn't really timing it. You couldn't really get that ball over the top. Maybe Darwin Núñez needed to recognize to drop into pockets and just kind of form. Uh, Create numbers advantages in midfield. It just felt like there would have been ways to play through this still. and they just weren't. They just struggled a little bit. And so this is a game. I said it, I think, last week. This is a game they did miss Alexis McAllister or a Thiago. And I think they're not going to be without McAllister. I think till maybe New Year's, and hopefully they get him versus Newcastle. Thiago might actually have him for the second half of the season. And I don't, it feels so long ago. Maybe we don't even see him, but if we do, and if he's able to stay healthy, those are two ifs. People need to remember when Liverpool got Thiago back in January 22. The reason why they caught Man City is they basically went unbeaten for that entire stretch from January all the way through May, and it was when Thiago got healthy and got into the side. So there is still a chance that Liverpool can maybe do something like that with Thiago back. Now, Thiago will have to be able to be back to what he was, and he'll have to stay healthy. But after you're seeing a couple of you're seeing some of these midfielders struggle a little bit. I think Slobodan's been overplayed. That'll be another thing I get to. That's why I think Trent actually works better as an 8 now. I played over Slobodan instead. Uh, and Konate and Virgil van Dijk played as good of a game as you could have asked, really. They handled Højlund for the most part. There was that one moment where Højlund got in behind Konate, but for the most part, he did well. But Van Dijk is basically finding the form that he was a couple seasons ago before the ACL. I need to knock on wood, but Van Dijk is as good of a defender right now in the league as I think anyone. We're seeing Ruben Diaz in some of these games struggle a little bit. I think he can maybe make a claim to that now. And the reason why I'd put him over maybe someone like Saliba is Van Dijk is a Rolls Royce without the ball and with it. He never seems to like make a wrong decision on the ball. He's just great with the long balls. He's great at picking out solid, great at picking out those runs. To also just not possess resistant. If the space is there, he can carry it as well. Anyway, I don't necessarily have to go on a little tangent. And the attack line is struggling a little bit. Luis Diaz, unfortunately, looks like he's taking some time to trust his legs again. He can still cut. He can still do a lot of good things. A few times when Liverpool were actually playing him in, he was kind of playing a little bit of a central area in this game, and I think he was trying to give Tsimikas that lane, that wing to basically have for himself to have some crosses off. And Luis Diaz was playing well, and he was collecting the ball well. He was creating moments for Liverpool. It just feels like he's not taking players on like he was before the injury. And again, it could have just been a tactic that Klopp asked, but it does feel like that's been a little bit of a thing. And I don't know. I just wish he had Jota's instinct to take someone on, and when he's in the box, why not try for a shot? Why not? Why? I mean, who cares if it doesn't come off? You're having 35 shots in the game anyways. I just feel like instead he was passive to me. And the one time he actually went for goal, I'm talking to both sides of my mouth because the one time he went for goal was when he took it off Nunes when I would have liked him to actually be passive. So fair play there. And just Nunes, I think, is struggling for not having a lot created for him. And again, it's just one of those things where he needed to do something different. Drop into pockets where Varane and Evans aren't going to follow you, and make it harder for them to pick you out on a run, as opposed to just waiting on the shoulder. So I don't know. I think Ten Hag maybe got Klopp a little bit. Klopp was expecting Man United to be open, to play like they've played for the last few games that they played together, where it is an open game because of Bruno. And Klopp went back to his 4-3-3 lineup. He wasn't doing the 4-2-4 or wasn't doing the 3-2-2-3 kind of thing. Uh, and I don't know. I feel like that game just basically required Gakpo and Nunes to bully in the box, and we saw it for 10 minutes, and I just didn't feel like it was enough. And so for a similar thing, I think my goal going into the season was I wanted them to just get top four again because they struggled. They got fifth last season. There was a new midfield rebuild, and so for them to be where they are, I don't think it's the end of the world. I do think for these two games, because both are at Anfield, that's something to remember too. Uh, with these 2 weeks of Man United and Arsenal back to back, you want at a minimum 4 points, and so this kind of forces their hand to be a little bit more aggressive and to get those 3 points versus Arsenal, and we'll have to see. They've got a big game today versus West Ham, and does Liverpool have Arsenal on their minds? We probably won't see Salah play, or if we do, we'll only see him play for a half. We probably won't see Van Dijk play. It'll probably be Kwanzaa play. Maybe we'll see Kwanzaa and Gomez. You can probably get to Gomez as a center back. I like him much better as a fullback. Uh, we'll probably see like Connor Bradley, not necessarily Trent Alexander-Arnold in the West Ham game, and so there might be a chance for West Ham to actually knock Liverpool out in the Carabao Cup because again the idea needs to probably the focus probably does need to be on Arsenal, and so another thing too is the forward line is struggling outside of Salah now, and all the talk preseason, at least from my perspective, I was worried the back line, and Van Dijk has been back to his best. Matip, when he's played, has been a lot better than I was expecting, and unfortunately, they're actually going to be without him now for the rest of the season. Kwanzaa has come in and been a rock in these Europa games, so at least there's some kind of a reprieve there. But if something happens to Van Dijk or Kanate, I don't think they have. I don't really trust Gomez for a lot of these games. And I do think Diaz is struggling a little bit. So it's not just at the back end; it really is the front end. Also, I was worried about them having missing Robinson for all these games, and Tsimikas has honestly been low key, kind of a hero of the moment. Tsimikas has been fantastic in a bunch of these games, so credit to him as well. And he's a different player than Robinson. But he's maybe he's better defensively. I don't really know. You're missing Robinson's bombing runs, but Tsimikas has been really really good. So yeah, it really right now it's the attack that's struggling a little bit. I mean, Nunes has gone 10 games without a goal. I think Gakpo only has 2 league goals. He's gotten going a little bit in Europa, and it feels like Gakpo is struggling. You're playing him in different roles week to week. Sometimes he's midfield, sometimes he's false nines. I would like to say find a way for Klopp to play both them together, like we saw a little bit last year. Maybe that'll mean Gakpo played on the left wing with Diaz kind of sitting out. And I do feel like they're missing Jota. The only attacking player that you can really kind of trust at the moment is Jota, outside of Salah. And I do feel like they're missing him, and so might you miss him versus Arsenal, unfortunately. But you can get him back, and maybe things will all change. But uh, and maybe Thiago can come in and do a job. I mean, the other thing to say is, Gravenberch and Szoboszlai haven't they've been tried together in a few of these games, and it does feel like it feels like one needs to play or the other, because, both are way too advanced, both are trying to, at least Gravenberch is kind of I think it works in an open transition game. If Bruno had played, Gravenberch would have run into the role where the space that Bruno would have left, been caught out of position, maybe would have been able to get some runs and lead counters that way. But when the game's kind of settled and very compact, you need someone that's really good at turning quickly and really good at finding, threading lines. That's where Thiago or Alexis comes in a little bit better. And it does look like they might be without Gravenberch maybe for a little bit because he did pull up with a hamstring. Um, and then Schluppschlei, I think, has been overplayed. People are going at him a little bit. For one, Klopp's turned him into Henderson. He's become the engine. He has to run when he has to do the recovery if Trent's out of position, things like that. He's being asked to overlap Salah essentially when Trent's being played, so Trent can play a little bit more centrally, anyways. So you're basically asking him to do a lot of work without the ball than necessarily on it, and he's a really good attacking player on the ball. But another thing too is. Uh, he hasn't really had a ton of rest this season, and he played 2 90-minute games for Hungary. He wanted Hungary to qualify for Euros. I think he's been overplayed. I think he's tired. And I think that's showing up a little bit too. So I would like to see him maybe get some kind of rest. Maybe not see him today. We'll have to see. And then again, Indo Indo is what it is. Not like Indo had a bad game, but he's not Alexis McAllister. Um, and then with Man United, they I think they lucked out with no Bruno and Maguire, like I basically said. I think they lucked out with McTominay being asked him to play a little higher, and they've found a gem with Kobe Mano, and I like him being played next to someone where he's not just asked to be the lone guy like Ten Hag did in a couple of these games. Him with Amrabat was quite good. Was a good idea. Amrabat didn't really have the best game, and but both of them played with the yellows. But Amrabat, will do the. Mano is 19. He needs an adult next to him, and it doesn't have to be Amrabat. When Casemiro returns, you can have Casemiro. But I like the idea of having him with a partner. So that was good. It was good by Ten Hag. I think he lucked into it, but it was still good. And then another thing too is Varane. The number of times he had a clean block. There was a moment when I think Endo had a great ball to Salah that looks like Salah would have been able to maybe get behind and try a shot on goal in the box. And just Varane was able to recognize it and just stick out a leg to get the ball to deflect it from reaching Salah. And just things like that, I don't think Harry Maguire would have done. Um, and so Varane and Evans, I don't really think you can just do this, week to week, because again, you play Varane and Evans in a high line, they're going to get cooked, both of them. So, but in this game, it worked out. It worked out that they were able to play packed in a little bit, and Luke Shaw being back at a left back as opposed to a center back, you saw him do a job on Salah. And unfortunately for them, they weren't able to really get him going, at least offensively. But you did that because you couldn't have Salah and Varane 1v1. So yeah, it was just, I think watching this, it was more like, what has Ten Hag been doing? Why hasn't Varane been playing more? That's the only thing I can say. And another thing too is this game it worked out not having or having Onana coming in prove a little doubters wrong. And I think the only other thing I can think of is not seeing Rashford play is the only thing I think you could maybe go at him a little bit more. Either play over Hoyland as your number 9 instead, or just play it over Garnacho. Maybe make Garnacho because he's younger. It makes more sense having him to come on in the second half versus tired legs maybe to be a difference maker instead. I just don't really understand why Rashford isn't playing enough. I know he's had issues. He's had scoring droughts as well. But yeah, it is weird because he's the only reason why they were even in Champions League last year. It was his purple patch, and him coming in. I think I mentioned it last week. The mix of him coming in and Hoyland, coming to the squad has changed a little bit how Rashford was playing last season because everyone forgets they were like from January on. Man United brought in that 6'6", uh, player that no one really liked in Wout Weghorst. And what he was really good at linking play. And he drawed attention onto him because he's so big and a threat in the air. Now, he didn't really score, but he set up a lot of Man United's goals. He had really clever movement in the box, and that would force defenders, to follow him, and that would create spaces for others. And I think you're missing Rashford, struggle because Hoyland isn't doing that. Hoyland is making runs, and he wants the ball played to him, either to run off the shoulder. Hoyland isn't necessarily, dropping to link play, and just none of these attackers are playing together. You're seeing that a little bit in some of the stats. The expected assist for these advanced stats, I guess for Man United's attacking three are really low. Rashford, his expected assist, Garnacho, and Anthony, they're all low. So they're not really creating stuff for Hoyland either. I think you're struggling a little bit with that as well. He needs service, and so it's not it's maybe a way for Man United to rethink things a little bit. Now that said, it's not like I'm going to shower them with praise because again, Liverpool did have 35 shots. It's sometimes you see these low blocks, you see these dogged kind of games where maybe a team only has 15 shots and like 3 on target. Now that is a job well done. Liverpool still peppered that goal. They just weren't able to make anything count. And then I'll move on to the other Manchester team in Man City and Crystal Palace, ending 2-2 in a game that just did not make sense at all. Because Man City were coasting, absolutely coasting. Crystal Palace's one shot on goal came in the 76th minute when they actually scored to get it back 2-1, and then out of nowhere, Phil Foden had the ball and decided to dribble into the middle of the field and then lost it. And then after it looked like Man City had gotten the ball back, Bernardo Silva is maybe fouled. And Mateta does something with his arm to kind of pull him back, but it's not called. And Mateta gets the ball into the box, and I think he gets a little deflection off Kyle Walker, gets lucky there, and then Phil Foden's trying to clear the ball away and just hits Mateta's leg, bringing him down. And then Elise is able to tie it with a PK, setting Ederson the wrong way to somehow scrape a point. And Palace did play Liverpool tough. But they were missing their keeper, no Sam Johnson anymore, and out of nowhere, Dean Henderson comes in, and Henderson had a good game. So this is not something easy to predict. I do still think Palace are in trouble because it doesn't feel like they can maybe, repeat this. But one thing you can say as well is Elise's back and Eze's back, and also Mateta showed some stuff in this game that maybe Edouard hasn't really been showing. So He's still without Decore, but Chris Richards has come in, to play that defensive, holding kind of player position. He's been doing good for them too. Man City were struggling to break Palace down, and they still were able to though to get 2 goals, but really weren't able to get that third. And yeah, that's been a little bit of the theme this season for Man City. But lo and behold, help is on the way because Kevin De Bruyne is back training. And it looks like Holland is close to being back, and you're going to get that partnership back, and maybe that'll change things up a little bit. But Pep's is still struggling to find out who can he play next to Rodri. John Stones was available and didn't play. He tried Rico Lewis, and Rico Lewis scored. But another thing too is this Walker, Diaz, Ake, or Kanje, and Gvardiol kind of back line. Walker is struggling a little bit in this game, or a little bit in this season. And if you think back to last season, Kyle Walker wasn't really being played either. All of a sudden, he didn't even start in the Champions League final. It was John Stones that played basically at fullback. And Gvardiol has come in, and it's taken a while for him to kind of get going as well. But in this game, I think Gvardiol maybe had his best game. And the reason why I'm going to say that is, and that's the reason why I think Grealish had a little fun, is Gvardiol was offering width, and Gvardiol has a left foot that could actually send some crosses in, so he forces you to mark him, and that'll allow Grealish to play a little inside like he wants to do because Grealish can't go outside. And Grealish, I think, benefit from that. 2 goals back to back where Grealish has gotten a goal. Um, and so we'll get started with there was an early chance for Alvarez. He strikes the post, good cross in by Walker. So I was going at him a little bit, but good ball here. Walker apparently had a very good ball in the club game yesterday. So maybe he's finding some form again. But this was a good save by Dean Henderson. And then there is a Diaz shot. Walker has a chance to maybe play a similar ball in the box, but completely mishits it. But it's good by Diaz here. And then there was a chance for Rodri, but all of these are like kind of outside the box attempts. They're struggling to really break through. And then they get their first goal with Grealish. And again, Crystal Palace are making things difficult, but City find a way to break through. And Diaz basically has a ball. He gets the ball basically in like the Palace like 35-yard area. So Palace are really sitting back deep. But he's able to find Foden, and then Foden has a very good pass he finds Foden with a very good pass, and then Foden turns and sees Grealish, basically losing his man, and he's made a very clever run in behind, and then Foden has just a cheeky, just little through ball, and then Grealish gets it and is able to pass it into the corner of the net. It looked offsides, but he was given the benefit of the doubt, and it's a brilliant ball by Foden. But this is what I guess Pep likes. He likes these kind of clever, number 8 created goals where you just pass through lines. Uh, because they Man City have struggled a little bit with width. Palace in this game did not care when City had the ball out wide for the most part because they who are you going to cross it to essentially? If you can mark Rodri, yeah, that's maybe the threat. So in this game, this is a case where Palace saw there was no the Holland. Maybe they thought they could really take advantage of that, and for the most part, their game plan worked out. And then there was a Gvardiol that forced a Henderson save. So Diaz, with a great ball over the top, picks out Gvardiol looking to get in behind, and he gets into the box, and he just can't beat Henderson with a shot. But it's a good run by Gvardiol, and I think he played maybe his best game. Unfortunately, he still conceded 2 goals. And then basically, maybe the game could have changed here. 2-0 or it's 1-0, and Palace really hadn't got any kind of dangerous looks at Ederson. They hadn't really even gotten an attack going. And then just one timed run, weighted ball by Elise. Plays Mateta getting a run in behind. Gvardiol, I think, is lost here. And Ederson has to come out and completely cleans out Mateta. And then Elise has a decent free kick. But there was some talk, could Ederson have been sent off for that? He only got a yellow, because he went in high, he cleaned him out, essentially. It was close to being the last man back. I mean, if Mateta gets past Ederson, maybe there is a chance to go for goal, but it was only a yellow. And then basically Alvarez scores in the second half on a free kick, but Rodri interferes. But a couple minutes later, it doesn't really matter because they get the goal with Rico Lewis. And uh, Grealish basically gets the ball, and because of Gvardiol holding the touchline, it allows Grealish to be a little bit more dangerous, like I mentioned. And Grealish has a run, or uses the run that Alvarez has. Alvarez makes a run, and it draws the defender away. And then he cuts inside and basically tries to pick out a teammate. The pass is blocked, but the ball just deflects in the air, and it bounces it bounces basically to Lewis and Rodri's path, where Lewis basically gets the final touch. And then in the 68th minute, Bernardo Silva almost clinched the game. He had a really nice curler, but Henderson was able to stop it with a nice dive. And then in the 74th minute, Palace on their first attack in the game score. And Mark Gahey just has a ball that I think Man City for players would have been envious of. So it starts with a great ball over the top by Mark Gahey, but it's a similar bit to first half of the to that moment where Ederson nearly got taken off, where one well-timed ball over the top catches City off guard, and this time they can't stop it with a yellow card. Schlupp gets behind Kyle Walker, and then just a square ball to Mateta is able to get behind, where Mateta is able to make a run behind to get in behind Ake. And this first comes from Mateta being really strong on the ball first after Palace go long on a goal kick. And that's what draws City's defensive shape to just kind of be unorganized and out of position. So I mean, this came really from Palace, starting the ball with a goal kick and whatnot. And just one ball over the top. Mateta, you find Mateta, and Mateta is able to keep it, gets other people into play. And then that's when you find Mark Gahey a little higher up the pitch than maybe he would have been otherwise. And Gahey has a really good ball over the top. And because Mateta had come to the ball, that brought Diaz a little bit forward. And just Schlepp, recognized maybe there was a way to get in behind, maybe get Diaz and Walker a little bit by surprise. And they did. And it's just a really well-timed ball by Mark Gahey. But again, even at 2-1, it didn't feel like this was really going to be trouble. City basically took control of the game again, and then Foden again tries to do a little too much and loses the ball in the middle of the field. And then after Bernardo Silva won it back, Foden kicks Mateta's shin, and Elise scores on the PK. And again, as I mentioned, 77 minutes into the game or 74, it just didn't feel like this was even possible to happen. And then out of nowhere, you look and City dropped points again. I mean, Man City weren't bad. 5 big chances for them, 20 and 9, 20 shots and 9 on target. Palace just 5 and 2 shots on target. 7 saves for the Palace keeper, Dean Henderson, who's back in the league. Apparently, and at least that's a good way to welcome yourself. I mean, Palace was 26% of the ball is what you would expect. Man City with 751 passes, but everything was just very congested, and for the most part, Palace just didn't. They set up to play everyone behind the ball and to basically have everyone basically in between the goal line. So there was all the space for City to do stuff out wide, and just they weren't able to draw Palace out enough. And again, just they weren't able to get that third goal, but for the most part, it took them a while to even get the second goal. Um, but again, and with Højlund, you can't do this. But another thing too is Mark Gahey and Anderson are quite good defenders. So they're able to just kind of get away with it. And Roy Hodgson special, I guess you can say. And then I will start with Crystal Palace. I mean, Richard's doing what he can. You get Elise and Eze back. So that's good. But I mean, the only negative, I guess, is 1 point isn't really going to change the trajectory of where they are. I mean, but maybe they can build on this. And they did play for missing what they missed. They did play Liverpool tough. I mean, just really unlucky to not get a point in that game either. I mean, they're really dogged defensively. The 5 players played in this game that really hadn't been featured yet. So you had Riedereld. Richards is playing a position he doesn't really play. You're without Jordan Ayew. Yeah, Richards and Bridewell. Joe Ward has basically played as like in a back 3, essentially. And they went into this not necessarily with full strength, and you're able to bring Eze finally off the bench. You're able to actually give Marcus França some game time. So nothing to go with them here at least, and it'll be interesting to see what they if Henderson can keep this up. Because it always felt like he was, he the former Man United goalkeeper. He was expected to maybe be, England's second in line in some respects. And then he went to Forest, and he got injured. And then after that injury took like forever to heal, Forest ended up, bringing in Keylor Navas, and just Henderson's kind of been forgotten about a little bit. And it looks like they're going to be without Sam Johnson for a little bit, and they didn't really want to trust an 18 or a young keeper that came in and made maybe a mistake on the Harvey Elliott goal. So they signed up Dean Henderson, and hey, what a good way to announce yourself again. And it's not the end of the world for Man City. Kevin De Bruyne watch back on, Holland watch back on as well. but it is another game where multiple goals are conceded. And I think the positive I think you could say is Grealish is starting to look better with someone making an overlap, someone keeping width for him with Gvardiol. And I think you're finally starting to see him score a little bit. And with Phil Foden was involved with everything in this game. But I think the only thing you can say here is he's probably the one most impacted by Kevin De Bruyne being back. It's him or Alvarez, but it'll be interesting to see how Pep finds a way to play both of them. And so it could be couldn't be poor news for Phil Foden with Kevin De Bruyne being back. We'll have to see. But I think another thing too is it's bizarre. Pep doesn't use subs to refreshen legs like ever. He used one with Rico Lewis in like the 90th minute. And I don't necessarily know if that played a role or not, but it is very weird. And with Pep, the Club World Cup is now underway. They won their game yesterday, but it's more legs, more games, and travel for his squad. But they do get Kevin De Bruyne back, so I think they're probably liking where they are in the table. If you look at where everyone is right now, if Man City were to just go in their 20-game win streak like they normally do around this time of the year, the league is probably theirs. If they don't, if this form continues, if they keep conceding goals, I mean, it doesn't matter if Kevin De Bruyne is back. If you're conceding a couple goals a game, um, it might not matter. So is this because it wasn't just Kevin De Bruyne last season? It was Gundogan as well. They don't have everyone firing at full strength. Mahrez would show up with a couple goals here and there and was really good at offering width, and they still feels like they have their width issues. Not no Jeremy Doku in some of these, but Jack Grealish is starting to enjoy himself and benefit a little bit more. So Jeremy Doku to maybe return as well. And then I'll move on to Brighton and Arsenal. And this Christmas came early a little bit for Arsenal because Man City dropped points and did Liverpool. And they were able to get the result against their bogey team, you could say, in Brighton. One of the few teams to beat them at the Emirates last season was Brighton. And basically, that was the game that gave Man City officially the title. Jesus scores. Basically, it's a corner kick, and Arsenal basically are becoming a beast on corner kicks. And they do something cheeky on this, which I'll get into. And then Havertz closed it off late in the second half. Um, and again, Brighton have come into this with some success recently, but that was also a Brighton team with McAllister, with Caicedo, and with Estupiñán. And Brighton are not that team this year, unfortunately for them. And again, I think with Arsenal maybe didn't forget that, but Arsenal that was an Arsenal team without Saliba, without Declan Rice, and Raya is now in the side. And when you look at Arsenal's 11, you maybe one of the reasons why they were up there to push make a title run again is they had their injury issues in the beginning of the season, but they're starting to field consistent 11s week in and week out. I haven't really had to change them for a lot now. They are missing Timber still, and they are missing Tomiyasu. But for the most part, everything is working, and they've been without Jesus for like a lot of the season. But they finally have him back, and a couple games in a row where it's a consistent midfield three and a consistent 11, and you have Zinchenko back. And with Brighton is just a mash of unfortunateness. They aren't able to do nearly the same thing. On this, they were able to play Veltman this game, but they lost him to injury again, and they're forced to play Milner essentially at fullback. And Milner ball for Saka just didn't feel. You're just looking at this before the game, didn't feel right, and Saka cooked him. The first 10 minutes, Arsenal have three or four chances just with Saka alone, just taking on Milner, not respecting him. I mean, in the fifth minute, Odegaard even gets a decent shot off, and Odegaard sees Saka making a run and just glides past Milner on the byline, and he fires in a scary cross in the 6-yard area where Arsenal just can't get someone to get contact, but it's a good warning shot. And then a little give and go, Odegaard again plays a ball to Saka making a run. He sprints past Milner like he's not there, cuts inside, and has a goal himself, but that one is a little tame. And then there was a chance with Saka and Rice. Rice basically dribbles into the box and then finds Saka, and then Saka creates a little space to get a shot off as well. And this one is just blocked by a Brighton defender. But Saka is getting all this freedom to basically do what he wants in the game. And then probably Arsenal's best chance came with Odegaard. It's a curler that just missed, but it did have a Brecken stretched and worried. And again, the supply comes from Ben White here, but Saka is outside, just drawing Matima's eye and taking players' attention off. And White's able to slip a pass to Odegaard, and then Odegaard cuts in towards goal. And I like the aggression. The shot doesn't come off, but I like the aggression. It's similar to what he showed versus Villa. So it didn't necessarily come off, but sometimes it feels like Odegaard can sometimes go missing. So I like that he tried the shot, it just didn't come off. Uh, but Brighton, in the first, like, 20 minutes they're making a massive effort to play from the back and not go long. And sometimes it's risky, sometimes they're giving the ball away, but they're also able to play through Arsenal. But the thing unfortunate for them is they were able to withstand the first line of pressure, but it was the second and third. They were never really able to create any kind of touches into the Arsenal box 'cause Arsenal was so compact. Saliba, Ferguson, and was not able to do anything with Saliba and Gabriel. It seemed like Adingra wasn't really able to do anything versus Zinchenko, and Matoma almost seemed like he had to do more defensive duties on Saka than necessarily being able to give Ben White some trouble. So just Adam Lallana was kind of being wasted. Maybe this was a game where Pedro would have worked out better to play in that little number 10 position because he would have had a little more pace to him. But that was kind of a weird theme in the game. Brighton were doing a decent job to play through Arsenal's first line, but when it got to halfway line, that was when Declan Rice effect was coming up, and they were was forcing turnovers, or maybe Brighton were trying to go over the top, and just Saliba was able to just run onto the loose ball. Just Brighton were not able to really get any kind of danger moments in the Arsenal penalty area. And this was I'll get to this. This was as impressive, at least a defensive performance, I think I've seen from any team this season. Now Brighton aren't at full strength. It is worth saying that, but Brighton have also been a team that have scored a goal in every single game this season, except for this one. So this was impressive. And then the injuries or the things just got worse for Brighton as Veltman had to go off, and so he didn't want Henselwood to come on, the 18-year-old, to play versus Arsenal, and they had to do it anyways. And so they moved Henselwood to right back. That's kept Milner still in the game. And if you looked at this and you're like, Henselwood versus Martinelli isn't really ideal. And Milner versus Saka isn't very ideal either. And in the 32nd minute, Martinelli got a chance, and it goes over the bar. Odegaard sees Saka running past Milner again, plays the through ball, and Saka square ball. It finds Martinelli, and he just can't keep the shot down, but probably the biggest chance of the game. And then there's maybe another mistake that Brighton have, trying to play from the back, and nearly costly. And then we have a chance with Martinelli and then Havertz. So of a brilliant save and then Van Heck block. So Gilmore with a rare misplayed pass. It's intercepted by Saliba stepping in, and then Arsenal break into a counter. Odegaard plays a nice ball to Zinchenko, and who feeds it to Martinelli, getting behind that kid Henselwood. And then Vibreca comes out and stops Martinelli, but the rebound falls to Havertz, and then that forces a pretty good block. So halftime it was kind of surprised that this was only it was a scoreless game still. Full domination by Arsenal, 15 shots, but only 3 on target, and that's sometimes you can go at them a little bit. Brighton didn't even have a shot, though. I think they had the game was 50-50 possession, which was kind of crazy. So like I said, they were doing a good job of keeping the ball, but just Arsenal were making them, Arsenal were basically dictating where Brighton was going with the ball. They weren't really, forcing a ton of turnovers, but Brighton were never really able to penetrate them. And that was just kind of a theme of the game, and things didn't get better for them. So in the 51st minute, Brighton escaped with basically a horrid pass from Brecken. Rice intercepts and finds Saka. Saka quickly plays it to Odegaard, who takes a touch, and maybe because of this, Brighton are able to only able to kick the ball out for a corner kick. I think if Odegaard first times this from Saka, he can maybe get the shot off, but he just took a little too long. But it doesn't really matter because they basically score on the corner kick after that with Jesus. And the thing I want to talk about here is because it is good delivery sent in, and Van Hecke, who just had the good clearance beforehand, tries to head this away and basically heads it by accident right to Jesus, who's completely unmarked at the back post. Now, why is Jesus unmarked? And it's almost like a design play. Arsenal have everyone lined up on the right side of the field, and then they have everyone run towards the middle. And Brighton, it causes confusion. And Brighton, I guess, either man mark or zone marking, and everyone is trying to, in the heart of the moment, trying to, find a man to mark. And Jesus just stays back, and just no one stays with Jesus. He gets lost, and it's a clever corner kick. And then Brighton did have a chance with Henselwood, maybe the first in the game, but Arsenal nearly scored on the counter. But one thing I wanted to notice is in the second half, at least, Zinchenko wasn't just playing in midfield. He's actually starting to offer some more runs out wide. And he's not just playing inverted or as a CM anymore, and he nearly creates a goal with a great cross here. We saw versus Luton Town, one of the goals a couple of weeks ago when he made a nice run on the wing and had a nice cross in. I think we saw it a little bit with Aston Villa too. And it seems maybe the idea is to get those runs that Xhaka was offering last season when he was making those runs out wide. Maybe the idea is to ask Zinchenko to do that. And you're going to see Martinelli benefit from that. He'll be able to play inside a little bit more. You might see Havertz benefit a little bit from that because it does feel like sometimes Arsenal have been missing some of that width on that side. So Zinchenko's offering it and has pretty good delivery on him. Now you're going to miss what Zinchenko has to offer creatively. Closer to the middle of the field, but I think they're probably worth it's worth that maybe that risk a little bit. And it doesn't have to be the whole game. It can just be in moments. Maybe you can ask Havertz to make a run outside or Martinelli in moments. But I think watching a couple Arsenal games now, that's starting to that's not by accident. That it seems like that uh, Arteta has asked him to do that. And then it does feel like Brighton nearly get a point where, or if Brighton nearly get a point, Dunk is going to be the man of the match because he's doing a lot of last second blocks. He's doing quite well to clears the ball off the line with I think a Martinelli corner kick. He was always getting in the way. Him and Van Hecke were doing very good. And then we have a save on Odegaard. Rice wins possession, Arsenal counter. Martinelli is just kind of nutmegging people and bullying people all the way up the pitch, and then he finds it to Odegaard, who tries to pick his moment, but Fabregas has a good save. And then we have Declan Rice with a near run to goal. He just kind of carries it 50 yards all the way to the Brighton box and then has a shot and forces a good Fabregas save, forces a kick save. And then Brighton brought on Yao Pedro and Welbeck, and Arsenal did dominate all game, but in the 78th minute, it was just a 1-0 game, and it did feel that was maybe uneasy. And then Brighton did have their big miss. You figured it was going to eventually come. They were going to get one chance, and they did have a giant miss here where Matoma Magic on the wing, square ball, and then Gross just can't get the touch he wants and misses the net entirely. Now, it's possible Weah can still save a shot if Gross gets a touch, but this was a pretty big chance. It doesn't come, and that was really the only moment that they had. And then Arteta, brought on Trossard, brought on Nketiah, brought on Smith Rowe, and Rice basically picks out Trossard, heads it into the 6-yard area, and Smith Rowe nearly has a chance, but he hits it right at the keeper. And then they get the second with Havertz, and Trossard gets on the ball. And he turns and finds Odegaard. Odegaard then sees Nketiah has lost Van Hecke. And so Nketiah does really well here. So he loses his man by being clever. And then he gets played the ball in the middle of the field near the halfway line. And then Nketiah sees Havertz making a good run in behind and he plays the ball. And Havertz converts the 1v1 chance to steal the game. And one thing I want to say here is once Nketiah gets the ball, he recognizes that Dunk doesn't know what to do here because he's with Havertz. But if he just runs with Havertz, and then Nketiah is going to be able to just make the run himself and drive basically the entire length of the field himself. So Dunk basically tries he's caught in between decisions and tries to kind of go halfsies, and Nketiah sees it and immediately plays Havertz the ball. So it's good to see. Good to see Havertz get the goal that and started to see Havertz kind of heat up a little bit, and good to see Nketiah have that moment as well. Everyone's going to go at him a little bit for missing a couple of those chances in a couple games back to back, but uh, I get to at least see here. And so here, Arsenal back top of the table again. Wasn't really impressive, but it just or it was impressive. Just impressive at least team performance, just not impressive offensively. They did have 26 shots total. I think they had like 7 on target. But it was a dominate a performance at least to limiting a team as good as Brighton to not having many chances. Arsenal did have 5 big chances as well. Only 6 shots and 1 on target. And this is a very good Brighton team. Brighton are good at not just keeping the ball. Brighton are good at normally creating a lot of looks for their attacking players, and they weren't able to do it here. So, and again, Christmas has come early for Arsenal because Man City and Liverpool do drop points. And another thing too is they're starting to get Havertz going, and he's making better relative runs. But I also think he's coming in from a deeper position. It's harder for defenders to see him coming. But another thing too is it feels like the last like 5 games in a row, he's gotten a header, a decent chance to score with his head, and versus these low blocks, that's gonna help him too. And he was nearly the hero versus Aston Villa as well. So Havertz basically going from that Luton Town game has really started to cook for them again. It's been a good December for Havertz and for Arteta. That's good for him too because he's responsible for bringing him here. There has been a lot of talk. Why did you do this? And maybe you're starting to see a little bit of his vision. I don't think it's insignificant that you're starting to see this as Jesus has come back into the team as well. There was always, and Zinchenko was missing in a few of those moments in the beginning of the season as well. It took a while for Arsenal to actually have their preferred 11, and now that they've got it back, I think that's a reason why you're seeing a little bit more of their success. Odegaard hasn't necessarily scored, but he's getting close, and I fear he's going to net versus Liverpool because he is starting to get it really, really close. Zinchenko with that shocker goal. But another thing that's I can't avoid it. I've been stubborn to embrace him. I've got to give Rice his flowers because at this point of the season, it's hard to not say he's maybe the Prem player of the year. Arsenal, I don't think would be in first place without him. They are forced to do things differently. He's not Thomas Partey, but and it's led to some growing pains. You can't say that. But another thing too is because he's not the most expansive passer, but it's his engine. He makes the midfield so much harder to play through. It's allowing Odegaard to have some free space. Odegaard doesn't really have to do defensive duties, and you're seeing Havertz not really have to do defensive duties. So sometimes he's playing in midfield by himself. Now Arsenal play with a high line because of Saliba back. So you really have Havertz and kind of a line between, maybe Ben White, or if Ben White goes to give Saka an overlap, you're seeing basically Rice, Saliba, and Gabriel all kind of next to each other. Maybe with Zinchenko in between as well. And again, it's not the same pretty football that we saw last season. They're not liquid, as you can say, but they are significantly better defensively. And you have to give credit Rice's flowers. Uh, and there you go. I mean, they're quietly doing what I expected City to do as far as being so good defensively. Another thing too is Martinelli and Saka are quite good at doing defensive work as a wide player. And again, in this game, really no enjoyment for Brighton until maybe Yao Pedro came on. And they're also Arsenal are about to get Julian Timber back, so it seems like they're only going to get stronger. And I get the only question is Nketiah, Jesus, Havertz, Saka, Odegaard, and Martinelli and Trossard enough to win the league? I've said you probably need, or it is said you usually need a 20-goal score, and you don't feel like that you have that here. But maybe if you can, if each of those players can get 12, 15 each, that's a way you can spread it out a little bit. Maybe you can do it that way. And they've also caught Liverpool now with 35 goals scored. And the next game is at Anfield, so a lot to see here. And depending how that game goes, I'll have a great Christmas, or I'll be the Grinch. Anyways, and then with Brighton did have that gross chance to make it 1-1, but it's more just De Zerbi is really struggling with the injuries and squad load. Lost development in this game as well. And the other thing you can say is Van Hecke and Dunk have been quite good together. And Yao Pedro, when he came on, offered them a little more power runs. I think they moved the ball better. Uh, and one maybe negative you can really talk about is I feel like they drop points whenever Milner plays. And I feel like as a fullback, it doesn't really work. Maybe the idea could play Gross at fullback again, because we saw that work a little bit versus Brentford. We saw that work last week as well. And then I think the other thing you can say is, I guess, versus Burnley. Um, that 18-year-old Hinselwood isn't the worst. So maybe try to play him a little bit more. And yeah, it's just with Brighton, it's just they're able to stay alive in Europe, so that's good. But the injuries are just really getting to the squad. And he lost a lot of his important players last season. It's easy to forget that. And I think I said after the first game of the season, I thought Brighton were going to be a top four team. Looking back, I should have realized losing Casado, losing McAllister isn't easy. Not having Colwell isn't good, and they've been without a Stupian the entire season. been without Sully Marsh pretty much the entire season. Now they're without Foddy as well, and then the list goes on. I think Brighton have been more impacted by injuries than any squad in the league, other than maybe Newcastle. Newcastle, I guess, will have a say in that. Chelsea will like to talk about that. Brentford as well. It's just kind of everyone really is affected by it, but Brighton specifically. Another team that at less is struggling with injury is Tottenham. At least for the main players with Madison and Van de Ven. But they're still finding a way to win games, and Ange Ball is doing it in a different way, and here they get they win 2-0, and it would have been done and dusted. Would have been nothing but praise, and then out of nowhere, Basuma gets himself sent off, just trying to go for the ball, and he is a little late, and it's sent off. We saw a lot of these this week where VAR reversed yellow cards into reds, and now you're going to be without him for 3 games, or maybe it might even be 4 because it's a second red. And so you're gonna be without him till, maybe, mid-January, is kinda how the fixtures go, and, so it's gonna be without Sarr, and, Oliver Skip has come in to the squad, and maybe I guess the idea will be to play him, but I don't think he's the same player. Um, but so more issues, for Ange, and then another thing too is Brennan Johnson back at the Forest ground. You were wondering, was he gonna be maybe motivated? And unfortunately, he went in for a 50-50 ball and got his head clattered in and had to be subbed off. So that forced Kulishevsky to actually play further out wide. And again, they brought in Skip at least in that instance. So Basuma was still playing at that point. So his Basuma, Sarr, and Skip not really the most creative midfield, you would imagine, but it doesn't matter because Kulishevsky was able to create out wide, and what a ball he had to find Richarlison for that goal. And going in, I was thinking Spurs might actually this could be a really scary game for them because Nottingham Forest was sitting very, very deep, and it felt very similar to what West Ham were able to do just a couple weeks ago when West Ham sat in a block and Spurs were not able to penetrate that. But here you had Richarlison. Richarlison is good in the air. He's a threat. He makes good runs, and it's different. It's different with Son being out wide and being able to create. It's different being able to mark him in the box than Richarlison, and they were only able to play Richarlison for a few moments in that West Ham game. They got him back, and he was the difference maker here because it's a great ball in the air, but it requires the head. It requires the player to be there, and he's able to beat Matt Turner. And then unfortunately, from a U.S. perspective, Matt Turner makes a big mistake for the second goal. He's being pressured, and first he makes a mistake by just kicking the ball right to Kulishevsky, and then from there Kulishevsky is able to make a defender miss 1v1, and then he has a shot, and it basically goes through Matt Turner's hands, and so Matt Turner makes a mistake, and that at 2-0 that pretty much is the game. Forrest didn't really make Vicario work until after that red card, and then they did. There were a couple of moments in the second half where they finally were able to do stuff, but I thought it was weird. I thought you understand them trying to be defensive, but Gibbs White and Alenga as the front two, none of them were strikers. Why are you going into another game without playing a striker? Chris Wood was available, and it hurt. It cost them. It cost the coach. Steve Cooper has officially been fired now, and in comes Nuno Espirito Santo, formerly of Wolves, and he had his stint at Spurs. Funny enough, and it's different. It's different to go from Wolves, where the job is to keep you up, versus uh, going to a club that I think has ambitions. At Spurs at that time, they had ambitions to be a little more than what they were at that time. When you have Harry Kane, that makes sense. Uh, so that the fit didn't really work, and here it's gonna be the same thing that he had at Wolves. The idea is to keep them up. So he's gonna be when he was a manager, he was very pragmatic, similar as Cooper. We'll probably see similar kind of lineups, but he also had Raul Jimenez that helped him out at that time, and he had Adama Traore, and uh, Nottingham Forest do have creative wide players. You do have Gibbs White, you do have Alenga, and you do have Chris Wood. And when Awani gets back, you'll have him. But roster-wise, this team should not be where they are. Cooper, I think, is just he's been forced into having a squad of like 35 players. So that hasn't been easy, and I think that's kind of struggled with him a little bit. But yeah, the brand of football and the type of money that they've spent. The owner just wasn't really happy with where they were. But it has been an interesting kind of a situation because apparently, the fans have spoken out, and a lot of them have been vocal that they don't like the decision. Cooper was able to bring them up, and there's something about that when you're a club that has been in kind of the doldrums for 20 plus years, and someone finally has that magic spurt to bring you back up, promote you, and then keep you up when maybe things were against you. He's earned a lot of good faith, and I think people were expecting them to stick on to him just a little bit more. But I don't know the way that they were going. I think they're only 2 or 3 points away from being in the bottom or in the drop, and so you understand them maybe doing it. I don't. The interesting thing that they did it just to bring in Espirito Santo, was a little bit surprising, but he does have experience. And, so we'll see. We'll see if it works out or not. I'm not really gonna spend a ton of time on the game, just because not a ton really did happen. Spurs with the 12 shots, 6 on target. Nottingham Forest 15 shots and only 1, but you're not playing with a striker, so it is what it is. One thing you can say with, Tottenham is Kulusevski was the main man. You've had Son in some of these games. Also Richarlison. Richarlison back is key, for some of these low blocks. Just finally have a striker to cross something in. But Kulusevski, started in the middle, created a few moments for Son, and then was asked to force to be a wide creator and was able to create a goal too. Not only created a goal, he scored a goal. And another thing too is he creates a goal with his left foot and he scores a goal with his right foot. And I always thought he was actually one-footed. He has a great shot with his right foot. Now, I think he's even talked about how he doesn't really like doing it, but why when it looks that good, why not? It'll change how teams defend against him. And again, the only negative really is that Basuma red. Uh, and then with Nottingham's side, I had in my notes that Steve Cooper was on edge, but now he is fired. They're not playing Chris Wood. I think it has backfired. So we'll see how Espirito Santo manages this team. I mean, I've got Gibbs White as a fantasy player, and I'm a little worried. Gibbs White had been playing well for me, and now is someone like him going to be asked to play a different role? Well, then again, he was asked to play a different role a little bit here, and I don't really like him being played as just a wide player in a two. I want him to have a striker to play with, to be a creator, and so maybe we'll see that again. I don't know. And then Fulham and Newcastle. Not a ton happened in this game either because there was also an early red card. I spent all this time talking up Fulham last game, and so that's what I get. I sometimes get in trouble of doing that. And this game started off competitive, and then Raul Jimenez first gets elbowed. And I think he's upset about that. They don't even go to review that. I think that's a more of an aggressive offensive than what actually happens. But anyways, that nothing happens there, and then a couple minutes later, Raul Jimenez, I think he thinks Longstaff is going to boot this away, and he's jumping to stop it. And Longstaff basically pulls out, and at the last second, Raul Jimenez recognizes it and pulls his leg back too. And it's awkward as hell, and he jumps really high in the air. Raul Jimenez has some hops here. And he's got his hip side as high as Longstaff's not a short player. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", and he basically catches Longstaff's head with his hip. He is Raul Jimenez like gets on a trampoline here, but he balls into him and he hits his head kind of hard. He's going full pace to do this, and at first at first angle you were like, did he go in with his legs because that is an obvious sending off, but he pulled back. But you do understand it is a little reckless. He's out of control. I think you can maybe say that when someone gets sent off, you probably, if you're out of control, that you're kind of asking for it. The ref at first, viewing thought it was a yellow, and then was asked to review it, and at that point on, it killed the game. Fulham did have a moment with Iwobi to counter, but Iwobi had no one near him, and Dan Burn was actually able to run back and at least make that as hard as possible, but Iwobi was only able to hit the shot basically right at the keeper, and that was really the only moment that they were able to have. And then from there, it was just can Fulham defend, down a man with the 10, and they weren't. First came in with Lewis Miley, really good, great play by Bruno. Sometimes you just kind of need a little luck to go your way, and Bruno first he gets played a horrid pass. It's like a hospital pass, and he's able to, win the challenge to keep it, and then he has a nice little dribble to get around a couple players, and then, basically plays a ball that I I I think he's trying to get it around another player, but basically the ball just gets, played off him, but Louis Miley is right there in the area, and he basically takes his moment, and good for him. 17 years old, gets his first goal, and he's been a relevation. Is that right? For Newcastle. They've had all these injuries, and he's come in and he looks like a senior player now. He's not just like good in moments. When he plays the full game, he looks good. He played yesterday, and he looked good. And then Almiron made it 2-0. A little bit of a mistake, miscommunication by Anthony Robinson, but very good play by Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon had a really nice through ball that was able to find Callum Wilson, and then Robinson is worried about Wilson, basically shoulders Wilson off the ball, but the ball basically, keeps going away, and it fools the goalkeeper, and then Almiron is basically there for the cleanup, and then they get the third with Dan Burn, just corner kick, and Bruno basically has a really nice kind of outside the foot cross, and he's able to find Dan Burn back post, and Dan Burn's like 6'6", and just basically uses his body to bulldoze it into the net. And, I mean, the game basically stopped after the red card, unfortunately. I mean, this game was going to be competitive, and Fulham were on the back of basically scoring 10 goals for the last 2 games, both 5-0s. And, unfortunately, we weren't able to necessarily see any of that, and Raul Jimenez was a big part of them scoring, 5 goals in the past 2 games, and now you're gonna be without him for 3 games. So is that going to change the momentum a little bit for Fulham? You worry a little bit about that. They do have Rodrigo Munoz back. He played a little bit for Man United, and then he got injured for a little bit. They do have Carlos Vinicius, but Carlos Vinicius isn't going to drop back and link a play that Jimenez was doing. Maybe Rodrigo Munoz can do, and apparently Fulham got some good news yesterday. They were able to. I think Tosin was able to score for them, and I think they won it in a PK shootout versus Fulham to advance in the cup final. Or in the third round or fourth round of the Carabao Cup. So good news there, at least. Another thing that was interesting is William wasn't played in this game, or at least was asked to sit. So it was Robinson and Iwobi on that side, and it was Harry Wilson gave a start on the other. You understand? Harry Wilson did have has had a fantastic moment coming off the bench for the last 2 games, but it was interesting to see William sit. You do understand he is 38 or 37 years old, so his legs might have required a rest. But I thought that Robinson and Wobie connection wasn't the same as William and Robinson. So, but it doesn't really matter because again, everything died with that red card. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the game. I've kind of just said what happened. Newcastle's 27 shots, 10 on target, 6 big chances, 629 passes, 90% accuracy. You don't always see that with Newcastle. So that can be something. I mean, even with 10 men, that's still pretty good because sometimes they aren't really the best in possession. But Bruno Guimaraes is special for them. Really, really, really good on the ball. He's unique. He's a defensive holding midfielder that can, when he gets the ball in advanced areas, he can also, he just really, he can unlock boxes. He is a 5-tool kind of player, I guess you could say. And maybe Longstaff, someone's always there to cover when he leaves that central area to create. There's always someone also covering for him too. So it's not like Newcastle really cut open there either. In this game, they didn't have Trippier. I think he was suspended, so they were able to play. I think they had Dan Burn as just back to his left back role, and it was Livermento. Livermento was played in the Trippier role, and the only thing to say, the only negative I think is they lost 2 players to injury still. So Livermento started the game at right back, but he was forced to move to left back because what happened to Fabian Schär? Fabian Schär had to go off, and so Emil Kraft came in, and he basically ended the game at being right back. So Livermento still had to play at left back, and Livermento still had a couple big roles in some of these goals. So Livermento played well at left back, and looks like he can play either direction. But that's a pretty big miss. Fabian Schär has been big for them, and unfortunately, Newcastle did play in the versus Chelsea yesterday, and probably their player of the year campaign has been Trippier, and he has not had a good December to say the least. Uh, and no European football, no EFL Cup. They are still live in the FA Cup, but this was I mean, this happened in like the 93rd minute where it's just a ball sent into the box and Trippier just misplays a header. Maybe he's trying to I don't know, head this back to the keeper, but it just bounces off him, and Mudryk was able to to run onto it and is able to release the ball into the box, able to finish, put it away, and then from there, it goes to PKs, and then Trippier missed his PK. So just a rough, and everyone knows that he had a hard time versus Everton. He had a couple real errors that led to directly to 2 Everton goals, and then, Son just kind of, really burned him, just a week ago. So, not a good December for Trippier, and I was wondering if he had been overplayed, beforehand, but, in this game, at least, he was able to get some rest. He wasn't he was suspended, in this game, so he came into the Chelsea game, um, actually as a sub player too. So yeah, just sometimes that can just kinda happen, and, obviously, after he made the mistake, you wondered if his head would be right to do the, PK, and apparently it wasn't. He just completely missed it. It's not like it was a save. It was just, missed the goal. So, a bad moment, a little bit, for Newcastle here after having a pretty good run of form. And, after that Man United, you were starting to look, and maybe they could go around with the table, and just injuries just continue to keep hitting them. Now they are getting a couple players back. They got Callum Wilson back. They got Longstaff back, but they've lost Joe Linton, and they've lost Fabian Schär. And it doesn't just when it rains, it keeps pouring. And when you look back after they beat PSG by like 4-1, you would have imagined at least they would get Europa football, and now they're without that. So it could be a blessing that they don't have any other, other than FA Cup games. They're not going to have 2 ice a week football. Is that going to be able to help them get a second run of form? Are they going to bring in apparently due to financial constraints they can't bring a ton of people still, even though they have owners with the richest owners in all of European sports. Because of financial fair play, they don't have the enough of the profits to necessarily justify that yet. Um, are they able to do something shaky where maybe they bring in a lone player in I guess the Saudi league to come? Maybe they bring in like Ruben Neves or Gabby Vega. I don't really know, but it is kind of scary a little bit for Eddie Howe because there's nothing to really play for now other than the FA Cup. And you figured, they knocked out Man City, they knocked out Man United. Had they knocked out Chelsea, they probably would have been favorites to lift this. They made the final last season, and you do wonder for Eddie Howe a little bit because I do feel like as good as he's gotten them playing, he's maybe made a few manager mistakes, in my opinion, mismanaging some minutes here. And I do think he needs to maybe be a little bit worried. I don't necessarily want to be that reactionary because I was praising them just a couple of shows ago. But I do think this could be rough. And we'll have to see how they're able to rebound. They have a massive game versus Liverpool, I think, in the early January. We'll have to see if they have everyone healthy for that. Everyone remembers that game because that's the game that basically kickstarted Liverpool's season. Liverpool got Van Dijk sent off in that game. They were losing 1-0. It looked like they had nothing. They had no chance to really come back. And then Darwin Núñez came on, and out of nowhere, Liverpool found a way to win that game at Newcastle Stadium. So we'll have to see how that works out. And then with Fulham, not really much to talk about other because of that red card. So I'll move on to, and it was a shame because I was probably looking forward to this game more than any other. And then they beat Everton in the cup final or in the cup game, and I'll move on to Everton and Burnley. And Everton go on to win 2-0 Sean Dyche Derby. I think is what I put down for notes, and they basically it wasn't just Dyche returning. Dwight McNeil was making his return. James Tarkowski made his return, and apparently Michael Keane had been a Burnley player at one time, and Michael Keane actually gets a goal versus former Burnley side, and the first one comes from Onana. It's just kind of a corner kick, and Onana just jumps amazingly high. He's already tall by himself. Trafford is going for this, and he's able to use his hand, and he's jumping, and Onana is still able to basically beat Trafford in the air. And then Michael Keane basically, there's another free kick that Pickford, sends, basically finds Tarkowski. Tarkowski heads it, and then Michael Keane is also in the area. He has a shot, and it basically it's saved by Trafford, but it basically bounces off another Burnley defender and just right back to Michael Keane. He's able to kind of finish it off. Um, the interesting thing about this was Everton went into this with a different shape. No Mikolenko in this game. So you saw basically a back five. So it was like a 4-1-4, 4-1-1, 5-4-1 shape. And so basically, Godfrey came in to be basically a third center back, and so Michael Keane was mainly asked to play, and no Mikolenko. So we saw Dwight McNeil basically play as a wing back. So it was Patterson and McNeil, and then Harrison and basically Garner were asked to kind of play as almost like number 10s, essentially, and then Onana and Decore were asked to kind of just play man in the midfield. No Idrissa Gueye because of suspension, and no Braithwaite because of suspension. So that's why Michael Keane came back in. And the idea to play Godfrey with them was a genius because Tarkowski and Braithwaite was not going to work. And you actually saw that there was a moment where Burnley were nearly able to get in behind, and I think someone is trying to play Anduni. I think it's Vitinho. Vitinho gets him behind, and he's able to play. He's got Anduni for a square ball, and then Ben Godfrey out of nowhere is able to block this. And because otherwise it's a tap in, and Burnley go into this 2-1 at halftime. Everything's entirely different. But because Godfrey was played, he offered a little bit of that protection to run in behind. So it was genius by Sean Dyche here to not just play Keane and Tarkowski himself. So we had Godfrey with protection, and that allowed Patterson and McNeil to kind of be really attacking wingbacks to keep that width in the area. And Harrison and Garner were quite good at creating some moments themselves. And yeah, it wasn't necessarily the prettiest game, but for where Everton were, I think starting September, they look entirely different. Like they're able to play in different ways. And Burnley did have 14 shots, but only 2 on target. Everton with only 9 shots, but 6 on target. On target is key. Burnley's XG was only zero point 0.7, and just Burnley were not able to defend any kind of set pieces or corner kicks. There were a couple other times when Trafford was struggling a little bit. Everton didn't have a lot of passes, but they set up to play without the ball and to be direct, and they had just any kind of ball in the air. You've got Onana, you've got Decore, you've got Calvert-Lewin. They took Calvert-Lewin off and brought on Beto, and Beto was able to make some runs and to be a threat in the air as well. Everton are really physical, and Sean Dyche has found a style and a pattern of play that they can repeat week in and week out, and you're starting to see that reflect in the results. And the only negative thing here is because I think they've won 3 out of 4 since the news came out that they were going to be docked points. Uh, it's possible they might be docked even more points. There's been talks that the 10-point deduction can be repealed, and maybe it'll only be 6. But there's also talk that there might be more points deductions even further back for something to do with the administration. But they haven't let that news affect them at all. And if they hadn't had those points deduction, they'd be even with Brighton right now. And I was worried about them to start September, like really worried about them. Um, and credit to Sean Dyche. Sean Dyche has come in and really he's not just getting lucky here. He's had to shape the squad up a little bit, and he's made the right call. And in this game, he didn't have Braithwaite to play with Tarkowski, and he knew Michael Keane needed some protection with him, so he played Ben Godfrey. So that was a really good call. No Idrissa Gueye, but he was able to play. He had Onana back and was able to play him. Decore has kind of been played as like a second striker in most of these games, and here he really was kind of a midfield. And Onana and Decore did quite good to make up ground and make things as hard as possible for Burnley to play through them. So this was quite good. And we saw Garner and Harrison kind of played a little bit differently, and that worked out as well. And really no negatives here. And the more you kind of look at how Dyche has the Everton playing, there's still a 6'2", attacking kind of player that can maybe do a job if he can. It looks like he has his head right in Dele Alli, and we could see. I'm curious if we see this. This could be a story that we see we look back in March. And we see if maybe he has found a way to kind of refine some form again with Dyche. It looks like he's being close to being able to play again. He went out on I think in Turkey or did a loan, and it didn't really work out. And he's spoken about how he had some mental health issues as well, and he was very open about that. And apparently, maybe Dyche has come in and embraced him a little bit, and it does feel like the way that they play he could do a job, especially if he's got someone next to if he's playing with a striker, if he can be like a second striker with say a Calvert-Lewin or a Beto. I feel like we could actually see him have a little bit of a resurgence. So I'll be looking to see if we see that the second half of the season, and then with Burnley, um, Godfrey prevented that 1v1 chance. Sandberg did strike the post. Uh, the one thing you can maybe say is Lau Foster returned from illness, so we're able to get him maybe going. He was the leading scorer before he got that illness, and he was scoring. He 3 or 4 goals for. I think he had 3 or 4 goals after through 5 games or something like that. So it'll be good to maybe see if he can get going. But too many goals conceded on set plays. They're struggling. Trafford's been a really good keeper, shot stopper, but he was struggling here, and I'm curious if other teams can see that and try to copy that. And then I'll finally move on to Chelsea and Sheffield. I think I've got 2 games left. And Chelsea get actually I'm doing pretty good for time. And Chelsea get maybe what they've been looking for. So Palmer gets the first one, and then Jackson. Uh, this was the Cole Palmer show, as they say, and Pochettino changed the lineup entirely. Thiago Silva back in, Badiashile next to him, Colwell as the fullback because it looks like they're going to be without Mark Cucurella for some kind of surgery, so they're going to be without another player, and Diazi was back in, and they're going to be without Reece James for a little bit. The interesting thing here was no Enzo. I think they said he was feeling unwell. Apparently, he played yesterday and wasn't able to go for much yesterday either. But it was Caicedo and Gallagher as the pivot, and then Cole Palmer was played as the 10, Sterling on one wing, Mudryk on the other, and Jackson. And to be honest, Chelsea looked almost close to being able to being a side that you could see what they were trying to do. Mudryk offered good width on one side, Sterling likewise. Palmer wasn't just asked to just play on the wing. Palmer had a little of creative role, and this looked good. Uh, and Gallagher, I didn't think could play in a bit of a pivot because I thought he struggled a little bit. He had a turn in this game that basically created one of Chelsea's better moments. Gallagher was 85 of 86 passes, so he didn't misplay a pass. I think he had 15 or 11 defensive actions, 11 recoveries. Uh, Gallagher was quite good in this game, and I watched that game yesterday with Newcastle and Chelsea, and it was weird because Chelsea, looked like they were going to lose out 1-0 when they completely dominated, and Newcastle are just running on fumes, so you kind of expected that. Newcastle, I think, only had 4 shots in the entire game, but it was another game where I thought Gallagher and Casado were really good together. And, I don't know. I'm wondering if this is maybe something that they can stick with. I've always been wondering, how is Lavia gonna fit in? Maybe Gallagher would be kind of the player that would be, shown the other side of the door, but it seems Pochettino likes playing Gallagher no matter what. And it was very interesting yesterday to see Enzo was tried as the 10, not next to Caicedo. Gallagher offers that protection to stop transitions. He helps Caicedo in that respect. Caicedo can sometimes get out of position. It doesn't seem like Caicedo is just a number 6 himself. He needs that help, and Gallagher's there to help. And I always thought maybe Gallagher would be a little bit like a McTominay, kind of vulnerable doing that turn. I thought last season at least you did see that. You did see him struggle, trying to catch the ball on a turn. You could get him maybe making a mistake, being pressed. In this game, he was able to turn around and exploited some space. So he had a good game. And with Sheffield, uh, we saw Ollie McBurney was back, and that basically forced Cameron Archer to be only a wide player. And I think this was a mistake by Chris Wilder because when you look at Chelsea, Thiago and Badiashile were playing high and they were being aggressive, and they knew that because they knew they could do that because Ollie McBurnley isn't going to run in behind them. So, and Diazy isn't really a fullback. You're not really asking him to defend versus a really good creative wide player. Colwell can do some defending, but you're not really asking him to do a ton either. So this wasn't really the game for Chelsea's back line to really struggle. So this was you look at this and this is a game that Chelsea should win, and they go on to do it. And really, it's because of Cole Palmer. And to get to the goal, Gallagher's the heart of this. So he gets the ball in the touchline, carries it to draw three Sheffield players onto him before threading in a pass that finds Palmer, who collects it and then quickly fires it out wide to Sterling on the right edge of the penalty area. And then Sterling has really good wing play. He gets to the byline and has a cross hard and low, and it finds Cole Palmer just for the easy finish. And it's good instincts by Palmer because Nicholas Jackson doesn't make the run. And he's again, if Palmer doesn't do this, Sterling's cross goes to no one. And then they quickly get one with Jackson, and Jackson here does make the run. But Mudryk drops for the ball and links up well. And Gallagher, they do a quick 1-2 with each other. Mudryk then finds Palmer on the wing, and Palmer cuts inside trying to pick out Sterling in the box, but the ball just kind of deflects in the air, and then a little chaos. Fotheringham tries to parry the ball from going into those net. Palmer is right there. He doesn't give up. The ball looks like it's going to go out of bounds, but Palmer's able to get there before it goes out of bounds, and then a square ball again is able to find Jackson for the easy finish. And then Palmer basically set up Mondo Brocha, who came on, and Brocha probably should have scored. One thing I didn't say is there were a couple of really good moments with Mudryk, and I think it's fitting that Mudryk scored scored the goal that got Chelsea basically two PKs yesterday, because Mudryk had that shot that became a meme, but I don't think people really saw what else he did. He was quite good this game. He thought he was more purposeful. I thought he was more purposeful in his cuts and runs. He seems to have more of an idea of what he wants to do. The only thing I think with him is sometimes it feels like he maybe looks down at the ground too much. He doesn't really have his head up, and I think that probably affects him when he's shooting. But for the most part, he was quite good, and I think that's maybe not he because another thing too is Pochettino is finally starting to play him a little bit. A couple three or four games in a row where he's given Mudryk a little run of games, and you're finally starting to see it. And again, I mean, Sheffield can be dogged. They gave Liverpool a hard game. But I think the balance in the team was much better here with Sterling and Mudryk on the opposite wings, with Conor Gallagher and Casado together. I mean, they weren't necessarily flying 15 shots, only 6 on target, but 5 big chances, and then 700 and whatever passes is what it is. But yeah, I mentioned the Gallagher stuff. 112 touches, 86 of 87 passes completed, 1 key pass, 4 for 8 ground duels, 5 interceptions, and 11 recoveries. And he was good. And then Cole Palmer just kind of he finds a way to just play people in near the goal. He's not afraid to play a ball into space, make someone run. He's not afraid if there's a gap to try something clever into the box. He plays it. It's just what Chelsea needs. Sheffield were just very, very dogged. They were just staying compact as compact can be. There wasn't really a whole lot of space chances to really get in behind him that much. So Gallagher was clever. He was able to find Sterling's feet, gets the ball out of his feet really quickly, finds the teammates' feet, and then makes runs when you need to. And he's quickly becoming an undroppable player. And the only thing I was thinking here is I like him as a number 10 as opposed to being out wide, where you're asking Diaz to just kind of be your wing back, and that's how you do it. Because I feel like he's a kind of a number 10. He likes coming in and to pockets anyways. So I think it makes sense. And then Sterling back in the 11 allows you to do that. And yeah, again, snark aside, Mudryk outside of the final product, Mudryk's starting to look better, and you finally saw the final product yesterday. I think it's also fitting that Nkunku is finally back, so maybe Mudryk is a little bit worried about where he's going to be in the rotation. But Nkunku was able to get some game minutes yesterday, and so there you go. I mean, help is on the way. Lavia back as well. Maybe you're seeing Gallagher think of that as well, and then Madueke and Chukwuemeka, which is easy to forget about, is training again. And so this is just Sheffield, and it's probably what you're supposed to do. But I think with here the to talk about with Pochettino is because there's a lot of talk on ESPN FC. How much of this is his fault or not? I think with the amount of injuries that have come to them, I don't really know if any manager would have been able to really do much better. It's been hard to establish a different a pattern of play because week in and week out, how many games have they been without Reece James? They came into the season with a really good summer, and then but the reason for that is that Jackson and Nkunku partnership was quite good, and I think they went into the season with Nkunku in mind, and you had to change it up with there. One thing you can say is who has Pochettino been responsible for bringing to the club? And one of the players is Cole Palmer. So they did a good job to recognize, hey, maybe we can get Cole Palmer from Man City, and that's been a pretty good pickup. Um, There've been a couple games where I've wondered why you're playing Levitt Colwell where you've been because I don't really feel he's a fullback. They've been without Ben Chilwell the entire season essentially. Um, yeah, there's just there's so much rotation that it's been hard to really see be consistent week in and week out, and they've struggled scoring. That's pretty much you look at Chelsea, they don't have a goal scorer in Jackson. Jackson needs to have someone else, and other than him, it's Romano Broja, and they spent all this money on like defensive kind of midfielders, and it's very weird. And they haven't really had Lavia, but it's been weird. They spent all that money on Caicedo, on Lavia. It was Andre Santos, and it just hasn't really worked out. And it's just all that time you could have looked at a striker instead, and they didn't. So I don't know if that was on Pochettino or not. So when you can't really score, you don't really have a way to score. You're going to struggle essentially, and so I don't necessarily know how much of it is on Pochettino or not. It's not necessarily like I can go with his selections that much. Another thing too is they've been decimated at the back line. No Chalaba, no Wesley Fofana. Essentially, they only got Batashile back recently. There's something to keep in mind there, and they just lost Robert Santos to injury, and Petrovic, the 18-year-old from the MLS, had to play yesterday and quite good in the shootout. Made a big save towards the end. So I think people need to keep things in mind. Everyone sees all the money that's spent, but sometimes that can unsettle a squad because you don't really know how certain players are going to fit in. Um, I think that was some of it too. So, and maybe yesterday is going to be a way for Chelsea to kind of restart their season. We'll have to see. And Cuckoo back, I think, will definitely help them. But again, we'll have to see. And with Sheffield, I think it is what it is. It was just I don't think it was the game for Mick Burnley back. I don't necessarily know if Usala was suspended or injured, but Cameron Archer maybe could have been played instead to just make some runs in behind because Thiago Silva struggles with that. Here, Batashile and Silva enjoy themselves because any long ball over the top, you're going to beat Ollie McBurnley there. There was really only one moment that really scared Chelsea where Bogle made a run down the wing, was able to get a pretty good cross in the 6-yard area. No one recognized it, including a Sheffield player. And McBurnley even had his hands in his head. But other than that, it was quite comfortable. So you expected Chelsea to have a comfortable game, and they did. And then I'll finally end off with West Ham and Wolves, and I'm going to be careful what I say with West Ham because Liverpool do play them in a couple of hours. West Ham scare me though. Liverpool played them already in the season, and I think Liverpool won comfortably, maybe 2-1 or 3-0. But that was a game that Lucas Paqueta really dominated. And I'm worried a little bit because Lucas Paqueta probably had his best game of the season here. He had a hat trick of assists, and the type of balls that he was just able to play in behind. Wolves' back line didn't know what they were doing. Uh, it was scary. And another thing too, I mean, West Ham weren't really at their flying best, but they get 3 goals here, scoring 3 goals in a similar way. Just catching Wolves' back line just by surprise with how direct they were. The first goal comes from Wolves having a corner kick. It's their corner kick, and I think Alvarez back into the lineup. He wins the first header. He's able to flick it to Paqueta, and then Paqueta basically takes on 2 or 3 players by himself, keeps the ball, and then sees that Kudus is making a run, out wide. Plays it to him with a really good ball. He gives it some height and some weight, so it's not just hard on the ground. So Kudus is able to catch up to it, and then Kudus just does it all by himself. He cuts inside, he beats the defender there, and then he surprised the keeper with a hard shot early. And I think the keeper sees it late. I think there are a couple bodies in the way, and that's the reason why the keeper is being. Keeper probably could have done better, but it is a backup keeper in this game. And then Kudus gets to the second, and then Bowen with the third. And it was the Kudus and Paqueta show because Paqueta was involved for all three assists. But another thing too is they got Alvarez back. They missed him versus Fulham, and because he was suspended versus Fulham, and he was incredible in the Europa game. And you see West Ham just function significantly better with Alvarez because that allows James Ward-Prowse to be a little more attack-minded, a little bit better, and just everything seemed to fit a little bit better. And so it was not a insignificant loss last week. I don't necessarily know if that's the reason why they lost 5-0, but it definitely it definitely showed up obviously. And then with Wolves had to go in this a little bit different. They played Bellegarde as kind of a wingback. They're missing. It's a couple games now in a row that they've been without Ait Nouri. I think you're finally showing. I think that's starting to show up a little bit. Semedo can do a job, I guess, with the ball, but he's always been vulnerable a little bit defensively as well. And in this game, you really saw Kilman, Dawson, and Tati Gomez just almost to be, I guess, naive would be a word to use. Just because they were all every single goal was kind of the same thing, just them being caught with Kudus just running in behind them or Bowen running in behind them. I mentioned the first goal. The second goal is basically Kurt Zuma first intercepts the ball and then passes it to Paqueta, who sees Kudus making a run again, and Paqueta has another great through ball. And it plays Kudus in behind, and from here he takes his time and uses his right foot to hit it past David Bentley. And I mean, these are the type of passes that you realize why Man City were really after Lucas Paqueta before the betting issues showed up. Lucas Paqueta looks quite impressive the way he's able to. You just imagine someone like Holland being on the end of some of these through balls because sometimes City don't necessarily do this, and Kevin De Bruyne will do it. So you're going to get him back. So it's not really going to be. They're not going to miss him any more than that. But just Lucas Paqueta, just you're finally having someone else other than Bowen that can make some runs behind and where you can really get his line for passes to benefit you. And again, I am worried a little bit with Liverpool coming up because Liverpool play a high line as well. Maybe not. Maybe they won't be without Van Dijk. Maybe it'll be Joe Gomez, and Joe Gomez can be caught a little bit. So I will worry about this. And then the thing with Kudus is, and he scores the first goal with his left foot, cutting inside, and here he finishes with his right foot, so he's 2-footed. Um, and he's shown an ability to score multiple goals, different types of goals. He scored bangers. He scored volleys. He's shown quite good technical ability to collect the ball and make a couple people miss with some moves. He's kind of a faulted 5-tool player, and what a grab he's been. He's also had a couple really good runs in their Europa campaign as well. And yeah, I'm kind of a little jealous because I do feel like Liverpool were somewhat linked to him a little bit. I know Chelsea were linked to him and Brighton were linked to him, and some out of nowhere, West Ham are the team that were able to go and get him. Uh, it was interesting too because and Bowen plays on the left. You're wondering how they're going to fit him and Bowen together, and they've turned out to use Bowen kind of in the striker spot. And it didn't necessarily work a little bit versus Fulham, obviously, but here when you can get him in behind, it obviously does work. And basically, you see where Bowen factors in with the third goal. So here again, West Ham intercept the ball, and then two passes later, basically, are in behind, and it's just a give and go with Bowen and Paqueta, and just Paqueta has a great just idea of where Tati Gomez is and just plays him out of the play. And it's just a 50-50 ball that Bowen's able to sprint past Craig Dawson, formerly a West Ham player. And Bowen just goes like he's not even there. And then Bowen, the question is, can Bowen add a finish to this? And he does. And that pretty much is the game there. So not the best performance for Wolves. A couple of decisions did go against them, but this was rough. I mean, game really was about West Ham bouncing back from that rough Fulham game, and they were. I mean, only 13 shots in 4 on target, 14 shots in 3 for Wolves. Wolves did have majority of possession. They did play some better stuff in the second half, but by then the game was basically done and dusted. So I mean, with West Ham, kind of what I said, just Edson Alvarez just kind of seems to be the key for them at least defensively, and they do have Liverpool in the cup game. And again, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this works with Liverpool having their eyes on Arsenal. And then with Wolves, I do think they're missing Ait Nouri, no Hugo Bueno in this game either, and maybe it settled their back line a little bit, and there we go. And then that's kind of the show before Christmas, or I guess the holiday period. So wish everyone a festive day, and then we'll have the infamous Boxing Day fixtures the next day, and that'll be because that's on Tuesday. Uh, it'll be hard for me to have a review show on Wednesday, so I'll probably try to do it fit more on Thursday or Friday. So it might be a little late, but we'll see. But anyways, thanks for everyone for tuning in again, and enjoy the holidays. And till then, you stay squatty and stop recording.